Tonight, you are no longer a person. You are a femme covert, a hidden woman. In the eyes of the 1850s law, you have no name, no money, and no voice. You have simply vanished into the shadow of a man. Stay with me as the gaslight flickers and let the modern world dissolve into the heavy, silent corridors of the Victorian era. Can you hear it? Not the cars outside, but the rhythmic hiss of a coal fire and the distant, lonely tolling of a cathedral bell. We are stepping back to a time of exquisite lace and quiet horrors. A world where your wedding ring was a beautiful shackle and your own bedroom could be your most elegant prison. As you settle into your blankets, feel the weight of a century pressing softly against the air. We are not just telling a story, we are reclaiming a ghost. Before the candle gutters out, we must find her, the woman you might have been 170 years ago. The world outside your window is beginning to dissolve now. The persistent hum of technology, the blue glow of the screens, the restless anxiety of the 21st century, let it all recede into a soft gray haze. You are safe here, in this quiet sanctuary of your own making, where the shadows are long, deep, and kind. The night has a curious way of stretching time, of thinning the walls between the now and the then. Tonight, we are not mere observers of a dusty past. We are travelers. We are pulling back the silver veil that separates your warm, dark room from the soot-stained streets of London in the mid-19th century. Imagine a single, flickering gaslight on a cobblestone alleyway. It doesn't roar with the sterile brightness of our modern lights. It sighs. It produces a gentle, rhythmic hiss, a pulse of burning energy that casts a warm, amber circle on the damp, glistening ground. There is the scent of old parchment in the air, that dry, comforting, slightly sweet smell of secrets that have waited a very long time to be told. It is the aroma of leather-bound ledgers, of pressed lavender, and of sandalwood boxes locked with tiny brass keys. This is our anchor. This is where the frantic pace of your life stops, and the slow hypnotic breathing of history begins. We are entering a labyrinth, not of facts, but of feelings. History is usually written in the booming voices of men in high offices. But tonight, the great monuments are silent. Instead, we listen for the subtle rustle of a heavy silk skirt against a wooden floor. We listen for the quiet, sharp click of a silver vanity mirror being closed. The year's 1850. It is a world of rigid lace and even more rigid expectations. Everything is polished to a high Victorian shine, a gleaming surface of propriety and grace. But beneath that wax and polish lies a complex machinery of control that would feel like a fever dream to the modern mind. Tonight, we pull back the velvet curtain. We step into a life where a woman was a masterpiece to be displayed, a treasure to be managed, and yet a phantom in her own household. But before we drift further into the fog, acknowledge the peace of your present moment. Your bed is a cradle of soft fabric, offering steady, unwavering support. The darkness of your room is a protective cloak, shielding you from the demands of the world. You are an observer, a silent guest in time who carries the safety of the future with you. There is no urgency here, no pressure to analyze. Let the intricate details of the 1850s wash over you like a slow-moving tide, rhythmic, predictable, and deep. You are simply drifting, watching the candlelight dance against the damask wallpaper of a room you've never visited before, yet one that feels strangely like a memory. In this flickering golden light, a young woman stands before a tall, mahogany mirror. She is preparing for a world that has already decided her fate before she has even drawn her first breath of the day. As she reaches for a velvet ribbon to bind her hair, her fingers tremble just a fraction of an inch, a tiny movement of rebellion hidden by the grandeur of her silk sleeves. To understand her, We must look through her eyes. We must feel the literal constriction of the corset and the metaphorical vastness of the silence in the grand hallways. Let us step into her slippers, feeling the chill of the floorboards beneath the fine fabric as we prepare to enter a life where every gesture is a choreography and every silence is a profound story. The modern world is gone now. The carriage is waiting in the mist, and the season is about to begin. The transition from the cool, misty streets of London to the interior of a grand Victorian ballroom is like stepping into a heated conservatory, a place where time itself seems to slow down and thicken. The air here is heavy, not with the gritty soot of the coal fires outside, but with the cloying, sweet scent of lavender water, crushed violet powder, and the warm metallic tang of hundreds of beeswax candles burning simultaneously in great crystal chandeliers. As you enter this golden space, imagine the sensory overload beginning to soften, melting into a gentle glow. The sharp edges of the modern world are rounding off, becoming distant and unimportant. You are 18 years old, a debutante in the full bloom of her prime. For 3 long months, this has been your entire reality, a relentless circling cycle of garden parties, afternoon teas, and midnight balls. You are told you are a flower opening to the sun, but in the quiet depth of your heart, in the year 1850, it feels more like being a soldier preparing for a silent, polite, and very beautiful war. Feel the rustle of heavy silk against your skin. This is not the light, breathable fabric of a future you cannot yet imagine. This is industrial-grade satin, stiffened with horsehair and supported by layers upon layers of starched petticoats that whisper with every micro-movement you make. Swish, swish, swish. The sound is rhythmic, steady, like the tide coming in over a pebbled beach in the dead of night. It is a constant acoustic reminder of your presence, yet a constant reminder of the cage you carry with you. To achieve the perfect gravity-defying silhouette of the era, your waist has been cinched by a corset of rigid whalebone and unyielding canvas. Feel the tightening of the corset now, not as a sharp pain, but as a firm, steady, and unwavering embrace around your ribs. It forces you to breathe shallowly, carefully, into the very top of your lungs, making every breath a conscious, delicate act of grace. It is a forced stillness, a physical manifestation of the quiet composure you are required to perform for the world. Your posture is perfect, because the ivory stays leave you no other choice. You are a statue carved from silk and expectation. Across the vast expanse of the room, the orchestra begins a slow, sweeping waltz. The violins are thin, sweet, and haunting, their notes drifting upward toward the gold-leafed ceiling like ribbons of smoke. You stand by the wall, your back barely touching the cool silk wallpaper, clutching a fan made of polished ivory and soft ostrich feathers. Notice the texture of those feathers as they brush against your cheek, soft, ephemeral, almost weightless, like a phantom's touch. You use the fan not just for the stifling heat, but as a silent language, a telegraph of the soul. A slow, languid flutter means you are indifferent. A quick, decisive close signifies a no that your lips are not permitted to speak. You are a master of this silent telegraphy. You have learned to blush on command, to lower your eyelashes at exactly the right angle so the flickering candlelight catches the moisture in your eyes, making them sparkle like the cold sapphires at your throat. Every turn of your head, every tilt of your chin, is a calculated move in a high-stakes game of observation and invisibility. You are being watched, not by eyes of love, but by eyes of careful, cold appraisal. The elderly matrons seated on the velvet sofas, the wallflowers who have survived 1,000 such seasons, are dissecting your worth with practiced precision. They look at the clarity of your skin under the gaslight, the straightness of your spine, and the effortless way you handle a translucent porcelain teacup. To them, you are a collection of strategic assets. They whisper behind their own fans about your dowry calculating exactly how many thousands of pounds your father will settle upon the man lucky, or perhaps shrewd enough, to claim you as his own. They discuss your lineage as if they are tracing the pedigree of a thoroughbred horse in a stable. Are there scandals hidden in the family archives? Is there a hint of madness in the ancestral line? Above all, they wonder, is your constitution strong enough? Is your frame sturdy enough to survive the 10 or 15 pregnancies that are the unspoken requirement of your future? In this grand room filled with light and melody, a quiet, chilling clarity settles over you. You realize that you are not truly a guest at this party. You are the prize on the pedestal. Your value is measured precisely in the curve of your ankle and the weight of your father's purse. You are a decorative object of exchange, a beautiful vessel for wealth and title, waiting to be traded from the protection of a father to the absolute authority of a husband. But for a moment, let that heavy realization drift away like the gray smoke from a snuffed candle. The music is so beautiful, so hypnotic, so repetitive. The way the light reflects off the polished parquet floor creates a golden, shimmering lake that you seem to float upon, weightless and free. There is a strange, dark comfort in having no choices to make, in simply following the lead of the music and the rigid expectations of the room. Your gloved hand rests lightly, almost invisibly, on the black wool sleeve of a gentleman whose name you will likely forget before the sun rises. The silk of your glove is cool and smooth, a delicate but firm barrier between your living skin and the world outside. Breathe in the scent of the white lilies overflowing from the marble vases, scents that are deep, earthy, and intoxicatingly heavy. Your mind is becoming heavy now, lulled by the repetitive circular motion of the dance. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1. The faces of the crowd blur into a kaleidoscope of black coats and pastel dresses, a spinning top that is slowly losing its momentum. You are tired of being a masterpiece. You long for the quiet, dark sanctuary of the carriage ride home, for the moment when the heavy jewelry is finally unpinned and the corset is unlaced, allowing your breath to flood back into your body like a long-awaited prayer. But that moment of release is still hours away. For now, you must remain perfect. You must remain silent. You must remain on display. As the waltz nears its inevitable end, the dancers begin to slow their pace. The final high notes of the violin linger in the air, vibrating in the heavy silence that follows. The heat of the room is fading as the tall windows are cracked open to the midnight air, letting in a draft of cold, honest, and unforgiving wind. The season is nearing its climax. The invitations on your mantelpiece are dwindling, and the pressure to be chosen is mounting like a summer storm on the horizon. The silk of your dress feels heavier now, a burden of beauty that you are almost ready to lay down for good. Feel the cool touch of imaginary silk against your skin as you breathe deeply, drawing the air all the way down into your lungs. Rest your mind on the image of those white silk gloves, discarded carelessly on a marble dressing table. They are empty, soft, and perfectly still. Just as they rest, you can rest. The gaze of the judgmental world cannot reach you here in the safety of the dark. You are more than a prize. You are a soul seeking its own quiet corner of peace. But the market of youth is a fleeting thing, a season that ends as surely as the winter. Behind the intricate lace and the rhythmic, nervous flutter of the fans, a contract is being signed, a legal bond that changes the very fabric of your existence. The ink is already drying on a document that will ensure you never have to dance for a stranger again. For soon you will belong body and soul to only one. Let us follow the scent of the orange blossoms to the altar, where the law waits to turn this beautiful girl into a vanishing wife, lost in the eyes of the law. The room is quiet now, the distant, swirling music of the ballroom having faded into a soft, indistinct echo in the far reaches of your mind. We have moved from the golden flickering light of the dance floor into the sterile, hushed, and timeless atmosphere of a mahogany-lined study. Here, in the heart of the house, the only sound that remains is the rhythmic, deliberate, and hypnotic scratching of a heavy quill across thick, cream-colored parchment. It is a dry, repetitive sound scritch, scritch, scritch marking the steady, inevitable progress of ink as it binds a living soul to a dead ledger. The air in this room smells of iron gall ink, old dust, and beeswax, a scent that feels strangely grounding and stable. In this secluded space, the frantic, nervous energy of the social season is replaced by the cold, unyielding, and heavy weight of the law. You are sitting in a deep, velvet armchair, watching the liquid ink dry on a document that carries more power than any whispered promise or romantic vow ever could. It is a moment of profound, heavy stillness, a long pause before the ink turns from a shimmering glisten into a permanent black stain on the fabric of your identity. Imagine that quill moving with practiced, uncaring precision, tracing the elegant, looping letters of a legal doctrine known as coverture. To the modern ear, it sounds like a soft, comforting word, perhaps a warm blanket or a protective shield against the cold. But as you listen to the rhythmic, scratching stroke of the pen, let the true, quiet meaning of the word settle into your thoughts. In the year 1850, the law views marriage not as the union of two distinct people, but as the total absorption of one by the other. By the act of marriage, the husband and wife become one single person in the eyes of the law, and that person is the husband. Your legal existence is suspended during the marriage, or at least incorporated and consolidated into that of your husband, under whose wing, protection, and cover you perform every action of your life. You are being covered. The law looks at the very space where you stand, where you breathe, and it sees only him. He is the sun, and you have become the shadow that follows him, inseparable but invisible. The quill continues its steady, unhurried dance, documenting the systematic and polite surrender of your world. Everything you once called your own, the small inheritance from a beloved grandmother, the wages you might have earned by teaching music, even the very clothes on your back and the delicate jewelry at your throat now flows into his hands like water flowing into a basin. You cannot sign a contract, for your hand is no longer recognized by the state. You cannot sue or be sued in your own name, for you have no name in the records of the court. You cannot own property, for you yourself have become a form of property. The law does not recognize your signature. It only recognizes his authority. Even your children, the flesh and blood you bore in pain and nurtured in hope, belong legally and exclusively to him. It is a total silent eclipse of the self, performed with the utmost Victorian politeness and recorded in the finest, most delicate handwriting. The world outside continues to turn. The servants continue to polish the silver in the pantry, and your friends continue to leave their embossed calling cards. Yet the no that the state once knew has effectively evaporated into the afternoon mist. As you watch the ink soak deep into the fibers of the paper, feel the profound weight of this legal invisibility. It is a quiet, velvet-lined erasure. You are expected to move through the world with grace, charm, and perfect composure, to manage a sprawling household and host elegant dinners, yet you do so as a legal phantom. If you were to walk into a grand courtroom, the judges would look through you as if you were made of glass. If you were to attempt to open a simple bank account, the clerks would look past you to the man standing at your shoulder. You are a passenger in the vessel of your own life, tucked away safely under the cover of a man who now holds the keys to your every move, your every penny, and your very name. This is the structural silence of the Victorian age world, built on the foundation that a woman's ultimate safety is found in her total and absolute legal disappearance. Under the law, you no longer exist. You are a femme covert, a hidden woman. You have become a legal ghost, a person whose rights and agency have been folded away like a heavy winter coat in a cedar chest, kept out of sight and out of mind for the duration of your natural life. But, as this realization settles over you, feel the immense, unwavering safety of your present moment. Let the scratching of the historical quill fade into the background until it is nothing more than a rhythmic, distant pulse, like a heartbeat heard through a wall. This is only a story now, a ghost of a law that has long since crumbled into the fine dust of history. It cannot touch you. It cannot reach across the vastness of the centuries to claim your name, your property, or your voice. You are lying in a room where your identity is vibrant, protected, and entirely your own. Breathe in the cool, clear air of the 21st century and feel the effortless expansion of your lungs, a physical testament to your absolute freedom. You are not hidden, you are seen, you are heard, and you are whole. The shadows of 1850 are merely shadows, flickering harmlessly against the wall of your imagination before they dissolve into the velvet dark. Take a moment to sink even deeper into the softness of your blankets, letting every bit of tension leave your shoulders, your jaw, and your neck. The mahogany study is dissolving. The smell of old ink is replaced by the familiar, comforting scent of your own home. You are resting in the luxury of your own agency, a gift so constant and so heavy that we often forget to notice it. The femme covert is a character in a forgotten book, a silent figure in an oil painting, a whisper from a time that has long passed away. You are the master of your own space, the owner of your own thoughts, and the keeper of your own quiet, undisturbed night. There is nothing left to sign, nothing more to surrender, and absolutely nothing to fear. The paper is dry, the ledger is closed, and you remain yourself. Yet, we must remember where this legal vanishing truly began. It did not start in a cold courtroom or a dusty lawyer's office. It began with the joyous chime of bells and the heavy, intoxicating scent of expensive white flowers. This invisible cage, this profound and lifelong legal silence, begins with what the world considers a woman's greatest triumphant celebration of love, wealth, and status. Let us move away from the study and toward the blinding light of the candles at candles. The altar, where the delicate lace of the bridal veil is about to become a shroud for a living identity. The wedding is about to begin, and the bells are calling you to the start of your beautiful, silent disappearance. Feel the cool air as we step into the church, leaving the quill and the parchment behind in the shadows. Step out of the silent, ink-stained study, where the echoes of legal documents have finally settled, and feel the sudden sweeping change in the atmosphere. The air is no longer still or dusty. It is vibrating, pulsating with the deep, resonant hum of a cathedral organ and the sharp, almost cloying floral sweetness of 1,000 crushed orange blossoms. We are standing now at the threshold of a vast ancient stone church, where the air is thick with the scent of lilies and the pervasive, cold dampness of centuries-old limestone. It is a scent that feels eternal, a heavy mixture of celebration and something much older, much more somber. As you begin your walk down the long, shadowed aisle, the sound of your own footsteps is swallowed whole by the immense vastness of the vaulted ceiling. The light here is fractured, filtered through towering stained glass. It falls in scattered patches of deep ruby, sapphire, and emerald across the dark wooden pews. It is a beautiful, meticulously curated world, designed to make this single moment feel like the shining pinnacle of a human life. But as you move closer to the flickering candles of the altar, feel the temperature begin to drop. The stone beneath your feet is unyielding and ancient, carrying the deep chill of 100 winters. This is the sacred stage where the girl you once were begins to fade, and the wife is quietly born. Feel the immense, staggering physical weight of the gown you are wearing. This is not merely a dress, It is an elaborate architectural marvel of stiff white silk, heavy satin, and layers of intricate lace, so substantial that it seems to anchor you to the very floor of the church. The fabric is cold and incredibly smooth to the touch, but beneath that shimmering surface, the mountain of crinolines and starched petticoats feels like a weight you must carry with every ounce of your strength. Each step you take is a slow, deliberate, and exhausting effort. Your veil, a delicate, translucent cloud of Brussels lace, hangs heavily over your face, blurring the surrounding world into a soft, indistinct, and milky haze. Through this fine mist, you see the faces of the congregation rows upon rows of silent, nodding figures dressed in formal black wool and stiff silk. They have not gathered here to witness a new beginning, but to silently validate a profound transaction of power and property. The silence within the stone walls is absolute, broken only by the faint, rhythmic, and haunting ticking of a distant clock in the vestry. It is a heavy, expectant silence that seems to press physically against your ears, muffling even the frantic sound of your own heartbeat. You are the radiant center of this entire universe, yet in this moment, you have never felt more peripheral, more like a ghost at your own feast. At the altar, the golden candlelight flickers in the draught, casting long, rhythmic, dancing shadows against the gray stone walls. The priest's voice is a low, hypnotic, and melodic drone, reciting ancient words that have been spoken over the heads of women for countless generations. To have and to hold, he says, and the words echo upward into the high, dark rafters, sounding more like a decree than a blessing. You find yourself focusing on the smallest, most mundane details to stay anchored to the present, the way a single bead of wax drips slowly down the side of a tall white taper. The incredibly intricate floral pattern of the lace on your trembling sleeves. The steady, rhythmic rise and fall of the shoulders of the man standing firmly beside you. You are moving through a complex choreography you have rehearsed a dozen times, yet it feels as though you are moving through deep water or a heavy dream. When the time comes for you to speak, your voice sounds small, fragile, and far away, a tiny, insignificant ripple in the vast cold stillness of the great cathedral. You are promising your entire life, your living body, and your absolute obedience to a man who, until a few short months ago, was a perfect stranger. The finality of the vow is like the heavy closing of an iron-bound book. The priest gestures with a slow, solemn hand, and a small plain gold band is produced from a velvet pocket. It glitters sharply in the candlelight, a perfect, unbroken, and unyielding circle of precious metal. As it is slid slowly onto your finger, feel the surprising weight of it. It is a remarkably heavy thing for being so small and so thin. It sits at the base of your finger, cold, strange, and permanent against your skin, marking you in a way that can never be fully undone. In this moment of sacred, beautiful ritual, the hidden truth reveals itself beneath the layers of silk and lace. The ring is not just a piece of exquisite jewelry, it is a golden shackle of absolute ownership. It is the physical, gleaming mark of the coverture you read about in the shadows of the study, the visible, indelible sign that you have been claimed, catalogued, and legally removed from the world of the living and the free. But as the long ceremony finally concludes, and the organ swells into a triumphant, booming march, return to the absolute safety of your own slow, steady breath. Let the cold image of the stone church dissolve into the familiar warmth and darkness of your own room. The heavy, suffocating white gown is gone, replaced by the weightless, breathable comfort of your own soft sheets. The scent of the orange blossoms has faded into the mist, leaving only the clean, peaceful scent of the home you have built for yourself. You are not standing at an ancient altar. You are resting in a sanctuary of your own making, in a time where your body belongs only to you. Listen to the distant, rhythmic church bells in your mind as they begin to fade, growing softer and softer into the quiet of the night. Their tolling is no longer a summons or a legal warning. It is a gentle, soothing pulse that lulls you deeper and deeper into your pillows. Bong, bong di wibble banai, bong, goani ni tau. The sound grows fainter with every heartbeat, a gentle vibration that carries the heavy remnants of the 19th century far away from your resting mind. Take a slow, deep, and unrestricted breath, feeling your chest rise and fall without the tightening grip of silk or the pressure of whalebone stays. Your hands are bare, free of shackles, free of any weight but the air itself. You are resting in a golden age where your promises are yours to keep or to break, where your identity is not something that can be traded, covered, or extinguished by a ceremony. The Victorian bride is a beautiful, tragic figure trapped in a stained glass window, frozen in time, but you are fluid, alive, protected, and safe. The church is empty now, the candles have been snuffed out by a passing breeze, and the silence that remains is peaceful and light, not heavy or demanding. You are drifting on a vast sea of quiet, where the only law is the absolute law of rest and renewal. As you sink deeper into the velvet dark, you realize the long celebration is finally over, and the last of the guests are departing into the night. The carriage waits outside the heavy oak doors, its brass lamps glowing like two steady amber eyes in the swirling evening mist. It is waiting to take you away from the world you once knew, away from the safety of your father's house, to a grand and silent new residence. But as the heavy carriage door clicks shut with a final metallic sound, you realize with a start that the destination is a house that is no longer yours to leave. The gilded gates are waiting to close, and a new kind of silence, the silence of the domestic cage, is about to begin. Let the steady, rhythmic sound of the horse's hooves on the wet cobblestones lead you toward a deeper, more tranquil sleep. Clop, 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 dot, dot. The long journey into the interior has only just begun, and the night is very, very long. The long, swaying carriage ride has finally ended. The rhythmic clatter of horses' hooves has stilled on the damp gravel, and the grand, echoing world of the cathedral is now nothing more than a fading memory of incense, cold stone, and whispered vows. You find yourself standing in the center of a darkened, cavernous foyer, the air thick with the scent of lemon oil, fresh beeswax, and the faint, lingering ghost of coal smoke from the morning fires. Behind you, there is the heavy, resonant, and final thud of a massive oak door, closing, a sound that vibrates deep through the soles of your feet and echoes upward, bouncing off the cold marble tiles and dying slowly in the high, shadowed corners of the intricate ceiling. It is a sound of finality, a sound that marks the definitive end of your public girlhood and the quiet, echoing beginning of your domestic existence. The heavy iron latch clicks into place with a sharp, metallic certainty. As you stand there, still draped in the heavy, shimmering remnants of your wedding satin, you realize that the world outside the bustling streets of London, the sunlit parks, the laughing voices of your sisters, is now on the other side of that thick, unyielding wood. The silence of the house begins to settle over you like a fine dusting of snow, a physical presence that is both majestic and profoundly, deeply lonely. Walk with me now, slowly, through the long, silent, and carpeted hallways of your new life. Your footsteps, muffled by thick, expensive Persian rugs, make almost no sound at all, as if you are already becoming a ghost in your own home. The house is a masterpiece of Victorian opulence, a vast temple built to display the immense wealth and impeccable taste of the man you now call husband. Every room you pass is a curated museum of stillness. The drawing rooms are filled with heavy, dark mahogany furniture that gleams in the half-light, the wood polished daily until it reflects your pale face like a distorted, tea-colored mirror. The walls are draped in deep crimson and forest green damask, fabric so thick and so heavy that it seems to absorb the very air you breathe, stifling every sound before it can take flight. Everything is soft, padded, and hushed. In the corner of the morning room, a tall, ancient grandfather clock stands like a silent wooden sentry. Listen to it now. Tick, dot, tock, dot, tick, mall, tock, ta. It is a slow, rhythmic, and relentless pulse, the only constant company you will have in these long, empty hours. It does not merely tell you the time of day. It measures the slow, agonizing, and invisible evaporation of your youth. The sound is steady and perfectly predictable, a metronome for a life where nothing of consequence ever truly happens. In this gilded isolation, your long days are divided into small, repetitive, and numbing rituals of survival. You spend hours upon hours in the morning room, the pale sunlight filtering through heavy dust-moted lace curtains, casting intricate, web-like shadows across your idle lap. You arrange dried flowers in translucent porcelain vases, your slender fingers moving precisely among the brittle, lifeless stems. You embroider tiny silk roses onto heavy linen napkins you will likely never use, the silver needle dipping in and out of the fabric with a hypnotic, repetitive motion that lulls the mind into a trance. In and out. In and out. You write long, polite letters to friends you are no longer permitted to visit without an escort, your pen scratching quietly against the expensive paper, filling pages with trivial news of the weather and the budding garden, because the raw truth of your boredom is far too scandalous to ever be named. The house is a grand machine of propriety, and you are its most beautiful, most silent, and most essential gear. You are surrounded by breathtaking beauty crystal decanters, silver-backed brushes, oil paintings of stern ancestors you've never met yet. None of it belongs to you. You are simply another exquisite object in the collection, a living treasure to be kept under glass, safely away from the dust, the wind, and the sun. As the long afternoon shadows stretch like thin fingers across the polished floor, the isolation begins to feel less like a luxury and more like a physical weight pressing against your chest. You wander aimlessly from room to room, your silk skirts rustling softly against the heavy furniture, a ghost haunted by the living world you left behind. You sit at the grand piano in the parlor, but you do not press the keys. The silence of the house is too heavy, too fragile to break. You stand at the tall windows and look down at the street below, watching the common people walk by with a messy, loud freedom that you traded away for a title and a ring. They are shouting, they are dirty, and they are vibrantly alive. You, behind the thick, distorting glass of your parlor window, are a masterpiece in a locked gallery. You are expected to find total fulfillment in the management of silent servants you barely know, and the meticulous planning of menus for guests you do not particularly like. Your intellect is a bright fire that is being slowly, systematically smothered by velvet cushions and floral arrangements. You have been told that this is the absolute pinnacle of womanhood, the angel in the house, yet the wings you were promised feel more like weights of lead, and the house itself feels more like a grand tomb made of soft, expensive things. Standing in the very center of your grand, silent drawing room, the truth settles over you like a fine, cold layer of dust. You realize that despite all the grandeur, the silk, and the gold, your entire world has shrunk to the size of 4 velvet-covered walls. Your existence is now contained within this beautiful, suffocating perimeter, a space where your influence ends abruptly at the doorstep, and your true agency is buried deep beneath the mahogany floorboard. But for now, turn your eyes away from the dark, cold corners of the room and find the light. Walk toward the hearth, where a low, comforting fire is crackling softly in the grate, casting a warm, flickering orange glow across the intricate patterns of the rug. Sit in the oversized velvet armchair and feel the radiant heat seeping into your bones, a gentle, pulsing warmth that thaws the chill of the hallway. Imagine the soft glow of the fireplace warming your toes, the orange light dancing rhythmically on the heavy hem of your skirts. The house is quiet, yes, but in this singular moment, that silence can be your sanctuary. It is a rare space where no one is demanding a performance from you, where you do not have to smile or nod, where you can simply breathe. Breathe in the scent of burning cedar and the faint, sweet aroma of Earl Grey tea. Let the rhythmic, steady crackle of the embers be your secret lullaby, a sound that is much older and much kinder than the ticking of the grandfather clock. You are safe in the present, resting in a time where your walls are as wide as the horizon, and your voice carries as far as you choose to send it. The Victorian cage is only a memory now, a story told in the velvet dark to help you appreciate the vastness of your own modern freedom. Sink deeper and deeper into the plush velvet of your imagination, letting every ounce of tension melt out of your tired hands and your heavy feet. The grand, lonely house is still there, but you are merely a visitor, a traveler in time who can leave whenever the sun rises. The crimson drapes are just fabric. The mahogany furniture is just wood. You are a spirit that cannot be contained by four walls, no matter how beautifully they are decorated or how tightly the doors are locked. Feel the steady, unrestricted rise and fall of your chest, a movement that would have been impossible for the woman in the silk dress. You are floating in a warm sea of golden light and drifting shadows, where the only thing that matters is the peaceful, slow rhythm of your own deep rest. The isolation of the past is a shadow without weight, and you are drifting far beyond its reach. As you hover on the soft edge of sleep, the fire begins to burn low, the vibrant orange light fading into a deep, comforting, and charcoal red. The house remains profoundly silent, but the silence is no longer entirely empty. In the stillness of the distant hallway, you hear the muffled, heavy sound of the front door opening once again. It is a sound you have learned to wait for, but it no longer brings the simple comfort it once did. As the master of the house returns from the world outside, you stay perfectly still in the protective shadows of the drawing room. In this profound, midnight stillness, you begin to notice small things you missed in the bright glare of the daylight. You begin to see the invisible shadows your husband brings home with him from the city, the secrets of the night, the invisible stains of the streets, and the hidden darkness that lives just behind his polite Victorian smile. The air in the house is changing, thickening, and the golden cage is about to get a little darker. Let the distant, rhythmic sound of his footsteps on the stairs lead you further into the mist of sleep, where the secrets of the night wait to be whispered. The fire has settled into a deep ember-red glow, and the grand house has surrendered to the profound velvet silence of the midnight hour. But in this stillness, the air begins to carry a new weight, a subtle shift in the atmosphere that you can feel against your skin, like a sudden draft. Outside the drawing room, beyond the heavy polished mahogany door, the silence of the long hallway is suddenly broken. Listen closely. It is the sound of footsteps in the corridor late at night, irregular, heavy, and echoing with a dull, hollow resonance against the dark floorboards. Thud, thud, pause, scuff. They are not the light, rhythmic steps of a servant finishing their rounds, nor the graceful, practiced glide you spent years mastering in the ballroom. These are the footsteps of the master of the house, returning from a world you are never permitted to see. They carry the uneven, stumbling cadence of a man who has spent his evening in the gaslit shadows of the city, and as they draw closer to your door, the gilded comfort of your surroundings seems to tremble, just for a heartbeat in the cold wake of their approach. Think back to the bright, dazzling public balls of just a few months ago. In those grand rooms, under the blinding artificial brilliance of 1,000 crystal chandeliers, your husband was the very picture of Victorian gallantry. He was the man who bowed with such exquisite mathematical precision, who offered his arm with a protective flourish, and whose polite, witty conversation was the envy of every matron in the room. But as the heavy footsteps halt abruptly outside your door, you realize that the man in the ballroom was merely a costume, a public performance designed for a world of witnesses. Here, in the dim, private reality of your home, the mask is permitted to slip, to crack, and to fall away. The bright, soaring music of the orchestra has been replaced by this irregular, heavy breathing in the darkened hall. The polite society that governed his behavior outside these thick stone walls has no jurisdiction here. Within the perimeter of this house, the laws of Parliament and the customs of the high society feel like distant, powerless rumors. The only reality that remains is the long dark shadow lengthening under the thin crack of your bedroom door. In the Victorian world, a home was often described as a man's castle, but for the wife, it was more like a sovereign state with a single absolute rule. As you lie there in the dark, the silk sheets pulled high against the sudden chill, you begin to understand the silent, heavy bargain that was made at the altar. The world assumes that behind these closed doors, there is only domestic bliss and sacred protection. But the reality is a quiet, structural vulnerability that no one speaks of aloud. There is no one to appeal to if the protection turns into something else, something colder. There are no police for the private drawing room, no witnesses for the moonlit hallways. You are alone with a man who holds the total legal right to your body, your movements, and your very peace of mind. The grand architecture of the house, the marble pillars, the silk hangings, the heavy silver suddenly feels less like a display of wealth and more like a series of beautiful soundproof barriers designed to keep the private world private and the secrets within safely buried. The footsteps move again, dragging slightly across the thick rug. You find yourself counting them, your breath hitching in perfect time with the slow creak of the aging floorboards. You realize that your entire sense of safety has become a frantic, silent study of another man's moods. You have learned to read the slight tilt of his hat, the faint scent of his coat, and the specific, ominous weight of his step to determine if the rest of the night will be peaceful or if it will be a night of quiet, endured storms. This is the invisible, exhausting labor of the Victorian wife, the constant, vigilant navigation of another person's whims. You have become an expert in the unspoken, a scholar of the moving shadows, navigating a life where your happiness is not a right, but a fragile gift that can be withdrawn at any moment for any reason or for no reason at all. As the shadow in the hall finally pauses once more, a cold, sharp truth crystallizes in your mind like ice on a winter pane. You realize that the intricate laws of the land stop abruptly at your front door. Within these four velvet walls, a husband's whims are the only laws that truly matter. You are living in a kingdom of one, where your survival and your sanity depend entirely on the temperament of the man who holds the keys to the gate. But as the footsteps finally begin to recede, moving slowly and heavily toward the distant end of the wing, let the tension drain out of your body like water. The sound is growing fainter now, losing its sharp edge, becoming a muffled, distant throb that no longer feels like a threat. Focus on that sound, not as a warning, but as a fading rhythm that carries the day's anxiety away. Let the sound of those retreating footsteps become a rhythmic, distant pulse that lulls you deeper and deeper into the soft embrace of your mattress. Thud, dud. Thuddy, ben shad. Thud, dadia. It is becoming nothing more than a heartbeat of the house itself, a low-frequency vibration that signals the end of the day's long uncertainty. You are here, in the protective dark, and for this moment, you are entirely undisturbed. The door remains closed. The silence returns, but this time it is a soft blanket of protection. You have survived the day, and the night is yours to reclaim in peace. Breathe slowly and deeply, feeling the cool, clean air fill your lungs without restriction. Imagine that the heavy oak door has been reinforced by the quiet strength of your own spirit, a barrier that no shadow can truly penetrate. You are safe in the vast sanctuary of your own mind, a place where no whim or decree can ever reach. The Victorian hallway is long and dark, but your inner world is luminous and filled with your own light. Feel the incredible softness of the pillow beneath your head, supporting you, holding you, as the irregular rhythm of the world outside finally fades into the steady, peaceful rhythm of your own heart. The master of the house has retreated to his own dreams, and you are finally free to drift into yours. You are resting in a time where the heavy shadows of the past have lost their teeth. The laws of the home have been rewritten by the courage of those who came after, and you carry that legacy of safety in every steady breath you take. The footsteps are gone now. The corridor is empty. There is only the soft, ambient hum of the night and the deep, restorative pull of a sleep that no one can interrupt. You are a traveler who has seen the shadow, but you are not defined by it. You are the steady light that remains when the shadow passes. As you sink into the final, deepest layer of relaxation, the entire house seems to exhale with you. The walls settle, the old wood cools, and the silence becomes absolute and kind. But even in this profound peace, a lingering scent remains in the air, not the scent of orange blossoms or the polish of lemon oil, but something sharper, something carefully hidden. It is the scent of things left unsaid, of letters burned in the quiet grate, and of the bitter medicinal tang of the apothecary's small bottle. Secrets are kept in the dark, especially the ones that cause pain, and as the house sleeps, those secrets begin to stir in the dusty corners of the empty rooms. Let yourself drift toward them safely and calmly as we prepare to uncover the silent betrayal that lingers in the very heart of the Victorian marriage. The house has settled into a much deeper, more profound layer of the night, a time where the very walls seem to breathe in a slow, rhythmic, and heavy pulse. But within this deep quietude, a new and unsettling detail emerges from the shadows, one that does not belong in the curated world of polished silver, morning teas, and silk ribbons. Listen to the changing texture of the silence now. It is no longer pure. It is broken by the faint, persistent sound of a subtle cough behind a closed dressing room door, or perhaps the delicate clink of a crystal glass being filled with water by a trembling hand in the dead of the midnight hour. There is a lingering, invisible fever that the servants whisper about in the dim safety of the kitchens, a heat that does not come from the coal hearth, but from a secret kept locked away in a private mahogany drawer. It is the sharp, clinical scent of lavender water trying and failing to mask the bitter metallic tang of mercury and potassium. This is the silent betrayal, a hidden dark current running beneath the surface of the grand Victorian marriage, as invisible as the law of coverture, but far more intimate, and far more devastating in its quiet cruelty. Think of the Victorian gentleman, the respected master of this house who returned in the previous hour with those heavy, irregular footsteps. In the bright, unforgiving light of day, he is a central pillar of the community, a man of serious business, a man of faith, and a man of impeccable public virtue. But the gaslit, fog-shrouded streets of London tell a vastly different story. Beyond the respectable, velvet-lined drawing rooms lies a world of deep shadows. The labyrinthine, dangerous alleys of the East End, the discreet, plush brothels of Haymarket, and the social diseases that were as much a part of the city's breath as the thick yellow fog itself. It was a world of extracurricular activities that society collectively and politely agreed to ignore, a dark, chaotic mirror to the rigid, airless morality of the home. But the shadows of the city do not stay confined to the city. They cling to the fine wool of a frock coat. They hide in the subtle creases of a practiced smile. And eventually they are brought home to the marriage bed, carried like a silent parasitic guest into the most sacred sanctuary of the domestic sphere. The prevalence of syphilis and other social diseases was the great unspoken plague of the 19th century middle and upper classes, a secret pandemic draped in lace and respectability. For a woman in the year 1850, her husband was her only legal, social, and physical horizon, yet he was often the very source of her most profound and irreversible physical decline. Imagine the slow confusion, the quiet creeping terror of a wife who finds her own health mysteriously and systematically failing. She feels a heavy lethargy that no amount of sleep can cure, a persistent, deep-seated ache in her bones that seems to intensify with the dampness of the night, or the sudden appearance of strange, inexplicable marks upon her delicate skin. She consults the family physician, a man who likely knows exactly what ails her the moment he steps into the room, yet he speaks only in elaborate riddles and soft euphemisms. To tell the absolute truth would be to destroy a respectable man's vital reputation, and in the rigid Victorian hierarchy, a man's reputation was worth far more than a woman's very life. And so, the doctor prescribes tonics and prolonged rest, hiding the harsh mercury treatments in colorful, unlabeled bottles, treating the superficial symptoms, while the true cause remains a shameful, locked secret in the husband's heavy silence. This was a betrayal that reached far beyond the bedroom, stretching its cold fingers into the very future of the family line. The silent, unwanted guest did not just affect the wife. It poisoned the very cradle of the nursery. The Victorian era is filled with these heartbreaking, hushed stories of vague infant mortalities and frail constitutions that never saw the light of a fifth birthday, many of which were the direct, tragic result of the diseases the fathers brought home from the shadows of their secret lives. A woman was expected to be the angel in the house, a pure vessel of morality and a tireless producer of heirs, yet she was often rendered barren, broken, or chronically ill by the very man sworn at the altar to protect her. She lived in a world where she was legally and socially required to submit to her husband's desires, even when those desires carried the invisible seeds of her own slow destruction. It was a relentless cycle of silent suffering, a physical burden born in the lonely dark drape, in fine silk, and supported by a society that preferred a beautiful polished lie to a single, ugly truth. As you watched the flickering, rhythmic shadow of the candle against the bedroom wall, the devastating reality of the protection you were promised becomes chillingly clear. You realize that your husband's extracurricular activities have become your lifelong, physical burden. Your health, your once vibrant vitality, and your very future have been sacrificed on the cold altar of his secret indulgences, leaving you to carry the heavy weight of his hidden world within the sanctuary of your own flesh. But as this dark shadow of the past looms large, return now to the absolute clarity, the lightness, and the unwavering safety of your present moment. Take a slow, deep, and unrestricted breath of clean, cool air that is entirely free of the medicinal tang or the heavy secrets of the past. Feel your body at total peace, resting in a time where medicine is a science of truth and transparency, not a tool of social cover-up or gendered silence. Your health is entirely your own. Your body is your own sacred sanctuary, protected by knowledge, by agency, and by the fundamental right to speak your truth. The fevers of the 1850s have long since broken and vanished into the distant mist of history. You are lying in a space where no one's hidden secrets can ever harm you, where your breath flows easily like a gentle tide, and your skin feels cool, calm, and safe. Sink deeper and deeper into the incredible comfort of your bed, feeling the steady, healthy, and strong rhythm of your own heart. The mahogany drawer is empty. The secret, bitter bottles have long been shattered and turned to harmless dust. The social diseases of the past are now just sterile footnotes in old medical texts, ghosts of a time when a woman's silence was a deadly social requirement. You are resting in the luxury of the light, where the shadows of the city cannot follow you home, and the truth is never a cause for shame. Let every ounce of tension leave your limbs, feeling the weightless ease of a body that is unburdened, respected, and profoundly safe. You are a soul that is whole, protected by the collective wisdom of the centuries, and the quiet sanctuary your own modern room. As you drift further into the restorative, healing embrace of sleep, the house remains perfectly still, the silence of the night offering a vast space for rest and renewal. But the profound unfairness of the past lingers like a faint chill in the winter air. For while the wife suffered in the lonely shadows of the morning room, the world outside continued to celebrate and elevate the man. Society looks away, for it has always maintained two sets of rules for two different genders, one that permits the wandering and the indulgence, and one that demands the silent enduring and the endless grace. Let the quiet rhythmic rustle of the window curtains lead you toward the final understanding of this Victorian double standard, where the law of the land and the law of the human heart were two very different, and often conflicting, things. The night is deep, the air is still, and the truth is finally, gently coming into the light. You are drifting now, safe and sound, into a sleep where the past can no longer reach you. Imagine, for a fleeting dreamlike moment, looking out from the small, velvet-curtained window of a moving carriage as it rumbles rhythmically through the darkened, rain-slicked streets of St. James. Through the thick, swirling yellow fog of a London midnight, you catch a brief, tantalizing glimpse of the warm, flickering amber light spilling from the tall, arched windows of an exclusive gentleman's club. Inside, the silhouettes of men move with a relaxed, unhurried, and enviable ease, their expensive cigar smoke rising in lazy blue-gray plumes toward the high, vaulted, and heavily gilded ceilings. There is a low, rhythmic, and comforting hum of deep-voiced laughter, and the steady, musical clinking of heavy crystal tumblers against silver trays, a sound of absolute belonging, of shared secrets, and of unquestioned, expansive freedom. This is the expansive world of the spirited man, a private universe of leather armchairs, quiet political debate, and discreet, unspoken indulgences that the night is specifically designed to swallow whole. But as the carriage carries you further and further away, back toward the hushed, airless, and velvet-lined silence of your own drawing room, that golden light slowly fades into the damp mist, leaving you with the cold, sharp realization of the invisible line drawn through the very heart of Victorian society. It is a line that defines two entirely different universes, governed by two entirely different sets of moral and legal laws. Think of the immense daily contrast between your husband's sprawling public freedom and your own meticulously maintained private morality. For the Victorian man, the world is a series of perpetually open doors. His vices, the long late nights at the club, the reckless gambling, the whispered, shadowed visits to the darker corners of the city, are seen by his peers and by society as mere signs of a spirited and vigorous nature, a necessary, masculine venting of energy. If he stumbles in his walk or in his character, the world offers a firm hand to steady him and a polite heavy veil to cover his tracks. His reputation is a fortress, built of unyielding stone and reinforced by the collective, nodding silence of his fellow men. But for you, the angel in the house, morality is not a choice or a spirit. It is a precarious, glass-walled prison of absolute perfection. You are expected to be the living, breathing embodiment of a bloodless, flawless virtue. Every single word you speak, every person you choose to visit, and every brief glance you cast must be weighed against the crushing, suffocating gravity of respectability. While he breathes the expansive, smoky air of the public world, you are confined to the rarefied, oxygen-starved atmosphere of the domestic sphere, where even a single stray shadow on your character could bring your entire social world crashing down into ruin. This double standard is not merely a social custom or a preference. It is a structural weight that defines your very worth as a human being. He may wander far into the darkness of the city and return home to a hero's welcome. But should a woman even be suspected of a similar curiosity, or a similar mistake, she is cast out into the cold, permanent winter of social exile and total erasure. Society has carefully crafted a narrative where a man's character is judged by his public achievements and his wealth, while a woman's character is judged solely and strictly by her private hidden purity. You are the moral compass of the entire family, the sacred keeper of the home's sanctity, yet you are given no power and no voice to protect yourself from the very man who brings the world's deep impurities back to your doorstep. You must remain perfect so that he may remain respectable in the eyes of the vicar and the neighbor. You are the silent, heavy anchor that allows him to sail into the storms of his own making, regardless of how much that anchor is dragged through the mud and the mire of the city streets. As you sit in the deepening blue twilight of your lonely morning room, the profound unfairness of this bargain settles over you like a heavy velvet shroud that restricts your movement. You see the deep hypocrisy in the way the local vicar bows with such exaggerated respect to your husband, knowing full well the dark rumors that swirl around his late-night habits and his heavy drinking, while that same vicar would cross the wide street to avoid even the shadow of a woman whose only sin was a fallen reputation. You are living in a confusing world of mirrors, where his reflections are always bright, forgiving, and golden, and yours are always scrutinized, cold, and searched for the slightest invisible blemish. The immense burden of maintaining the family's honor falls entirely and squarely upon your slender shoulders, while the absolute privilege of risking that honor belongs exclusively to him. It is a one-sided, silent contract, written in the ink of gender, and enforced by the steady, rhythmic nodding of 1,000 respectable and unseeing heads. The reveal, in the quiet, flickering, and dying light of your bedside candle, the bitterest and most enduring truth of the Victorian age finally reveals itself to you. In the eyes of this polished world, he is merely considered spirited for his vices, his wanderings, and his betrayals. Yet you are the one who is considered ruined for his mistakes. You are the one who carries the physical, social, and emotional consequences of a life he lived, a life you were never allowed to know, yet were always required by law and by custom to forgive without question. But as this heavy realization pulses in the back of your tired mind, return now to the absolute unwavering safety and the vast healing distance of the present day. Let the flickering distant light of the gentleman's club fade away into the soft, steady, and peaceful glow of your own modern home. The structural injustice of the 19th century is far, far away now, lost in the thick, dissipating fog of a history that no longer has a hold on you. It is merely a ghost of a story, a faded yellowed photograph in an old forgotten album that no longer has the power to dictate your worth, your movements, or your morality. You are lying in a bed that belongs entirely to you, in a world that finally recognizes your voice, your legal agency, and your fundamental right to an equal and honest morality. The double standards of the 1850s have crumbled alongside the stone walls of the old clubs, leaving you free to define your own virtue in the light of the truth. Sink deeper into the soft, supporting embrace of your pillows, feeling the tension melt out of your neck and your mind. The carriage has stopped, the fog has cleared, and you are safe. There are no two sets of rules here in the dark, only the single peaceful rule of rest and recovery. Feel the steady, unrestricted rhythm of your breath, a movement that is yours and yours alone. You are spirit that is equal to any other, resting in the sanctuary of a more just and more open time. Let the silence of the night be your comfort, a space where no one's expectations can reach you. Yet even as the world of the club and the drawing room fades into the background, a new and more personal weight begins to make itself felt. Among all these social inequalities, among all the laws and the double standards, the greatest burden of all is the one that is growing, silent and heavy, inside the very center of your being. The cycle of the Victorian life is about to turn once more, as the private consequence of a public marriage begins its long, quiet development. Let us move from the society of men to the most private and most dangerous room of the Victorian house, the nursery, where life begins in shadow. The house has now descended into the deepest, most hollow, and most silent hours of the night, where the only remaining sound is the subtle settling of old timber and the faint, rhythmic, and haunting creak of a heavy wooden nursery chair rocking steadily on a distant, uneven floorboard. Back and forth, back and forth. It is a lonely, mechanical, and tireless sound, a heartbeat of the domestic sphere that never truly finds its rest. In the year 1850, this simple wooden chair is the absolute center of a woman's universe, the silent throne of her lifelong labor, and the sole witness to her slow, inevitable physical erosion. As you lie in the absolute stillness of your own modern room, let that distant, ghostly rocking become a soft pulse, a steady metronome that leads us into the most private, the most grueling, and the most hidden reality of the Victorian marriage. This is the room where the angel in the house meets the cold, unyielding biological limits of her own mortal existence. Think of the staggering, relentless, and overwhelming physical reality of a Victorian woman's reproductive life. In an era where any form of birth control is a whispered, forbidden myth, and the strict law of coverture demands an absolute and unquestioned marital debt. Marriage is not merely a social contract. It is a biological sentence of endurance. Imagine the slow, cumulative toll on a human body that is never, ever permitted to fully recover or find its original strength. One long pregnancy is followed almost immediately by another and another and another, until the passing years are no longer measured by the changing seasons or happy anniversaries, but by the steady, exhausting cycle of carrying, nursing, and the frantic, fearful care of the newborn. For many women of your social station, it is not uncommon to face 10, 12, or even 15 grueling pregnancies in a brief span of 20 years. Your body becomes a vessel that is constantly being drained, a landscape that is perpetually being reshaped, depleted, and exhausted by the relentless demands of a growing family and a husband's legal expectations of his lineage. Visualize the slow, cumulative wear on the delicate frame of a woman who has spent her entire adult life trapped in this cycle of creation and depletion. The vibrant, glowing energy of the 18-year-old debutante you once saw in the ballroom has been replaced by a profound, bone-deep lethargy that no tonic, no matter how expensive, can ever truly lift. The spine begins to curve slightly under the repeated heavy weight of the years. The teeth weaken as the mother's body sacrifices its own vital minerals to build the bones of the children growing within. The very heart grows weary from the constant, surging demands of supporting two lives at once, over and over again. There is a permanent underlying grayness to the skin, a lingering shadow under the eyes that reflects the thousands upon thousands of hours spent awake in that rocking chair, either soothing a sudden fever or quietly mourning a small, silent loss. In the mid-19th century, a woman's body is a literal battlefield, and every child born is a victory that carries a hidden, permanent, and heavy cost to the mother who remains. In the nursery, the midnight air is heavy, still, and thick with the scent of camphor, warm milk, and the sweet, slightly cloying smell of a child's sweat. It is a room of great unconditional love, certainly, but it is also a room of great, silent, and ever-present terror. Every single pregnancy is a high-stakes gamble with what women of the time called the dark valley of the shadow. You look at your growing daughters and feel a sharp pang of bittersweet sorrow, knowing in your heart that the same beautiful, suffocating cycle likely awaits them in their turn. You look at your growing sons and realize with a sigh that they will never truly understand the staggering price of their own existence. The Victorian house is built on the visible labor of men in the city, but it is populated, sustained, and filled by the invisible life-draining labor of women a labor, that is performed in the quiet, in the deep dark, and behind the firmly closed doors of the nursery wing. As the distant rhythmic chair continues its ghostly, unhurried rocking, the final heavy truth of your domestic bliss is laid bare in the shadows. You realize that for a woman in 1850, marriage was not a destination of rest or companionship, but a continuous, relentless cycle of physical labor that all too often ended in a quiet, lonely, and early grave. The promised protection of the home was frequently just a slow, polite path to absolute exhaustion, where your total value as a wife was measured primarily by how much of your own life and vitality you could give away to ensure the survival of a name that was never truly your own. But as this heavy weight of the past settles into the floorboards, return now to the incredible, weightless, and effortless lightness of your own body in the present. Take a slow, deep, and entirely effortless breath, feeling the cool air fill your lungs with a freedom that is your natural birthright. Your body is not a vessel for anyone else's legacy or expectations. It is your own sacred and private home, whole, unburdened, and respected. Feel the total, absolute comfort of your limbs as they sink deeper into the mattress, entirely free of the heaviness of pregnancy, free of the staggering exhaustion of the nursery, and free of the demands of an era that saw you merely as a means to an end. You are light. You are effortless. You are resting in a time where your health is cherished as your own, and where your choices are yours alone to make. Sink deeper and deeper into the soft, supporting dark of your room, letting the distant creak of the nursery chair fade away into a harmless, flickering memory of a time long gone. The sentence of pregnancy has been commuted by the steady progress of time and the immense courage of those who fought for your right to your own body and your own future. You are lying in a sanctuary of absolute peace, where the only rhythm that matters is the steady, calming, and restorative beat of your own healthy heart. Your skin is cool and calm, your mind is clear and still, and your rest is deep, dark, and undisturbed. The heavy shadows of the 1850 nursery have dissolved into the night, leaving you with the quiet, restorative luxury of being entirely and beautifully yourself. Take another slow, rhythmic breath, feeling the last traces of tension evaporate from your shoulders, your jaw, and your brow. You are safe. You are cared for by the present. You are free. The long, wearying cycle of the past is over, and you have reached the soft shore of a much kinder, much more transparent world. Let the profound silence of your room be a soft, thick blanket that protects you from the echoes of the historical past. But as the night reaches its deepest, most silent point, the rhythmic rocking of the nursery chair finally, slowly stops. The silence that follows is not a peaceful one, but an expectant, breathless one. For even in this world of silk ribbons and soft nursery rhymes, the moment of ultimate trial remains waiting in the dark. When the long, heavy months of waiting finally reached their inevitable end, the Victorian woman faced a reality that no amount of family wealth or social status could ever truly soften. For when the time for birth finally came, mercy was rarely found in the cold, unwashed, and hurried hands of 19th century medicine. Let us move toward the final flickering light of the birthing room, where the greatest and most intimate danger of all is waiting in the heavy silence. Your eyes are heavy now, and the light is fading. The grand Victorian house has finally grown cold, the fire in the parlor grate reduced to a small glowing heap of pale gray ash that stirs only slightly in the soft midnight draft. But in the furthest, most secluded wing, behind a heavy oak door that has been closed firmly for many hours, the absolute silence is replaced by the urgent domestic sounds of a quiet and private crisis. Listen closely to the sharp metallic rattle of a heavy copper kettle on a cast iron stove, and the rhythmic, splashing sound of boiling water being poured into wide, steaming ceramic basins. Then there is the unmistakable, jarring sound of thick linen sheets being torn into long, jagged, and purposeful strips. Rip a sound that cuts through the thick velvet Victorian night like a cold blade through fine silk. The air in this room is no longer sweet with the scent of lavender or the gentle polish of lemon oil. It is heavy, thick, and humid with the scent of vinegar, steam, and the sharp, unmistakable coppery tang of a profound physical struggle. This is the battlefield of birth, the sacred and terrifying place where the angel in the house must finally pay the ancient, heavy price that her society and her unyielding faith have demanded of her since the very dawn of time. In the year 1850, the birthing room is not merely a medical space. It is a profound and daunting theological one. As you lie in the protective dark, imagine the immense, invisible weight of 1,000 years of rigid doctrine pressing down on the woman in that heavy bed. There is a deeply held, unyielding religious belief that women must suffer in childbirth as a fundamental, inescapable punishment for Eve's original sin in the Garden of Eden. To the Victorian mind, the staggering agony of labor is not a biological malfunction to be managed or a pain to be eased by science, but a divine decree to be endured with humble, silent submission. Leading clergymen and many prominent physicians alike argue with cold conviction that to interfere with this pain is to interfere with the manifest will of God himself. In sorrow thou shalt bring forth children. The ancient scripture echoes through the high, dark rafters of the stone church and deep into the very marrow of the mother's aching bone. In this world, the sheer intensity of your pain is seen as a sacred measure of your womanly penance, a necessary, purifying suffering that is meant to refine the soul, even as it breaks the physical body. The physical reality of this holy suffering is a stark, brutal contrast to the silk ribbons, the soft lace, and the gentle nursery rhymes of the world outside these heavy walls. The room is dim, lit only by a few flickering, dying candles that cast long, distorted, and dancing shadows of the midwives and the doctor against the faded floral wallpaper. There is no anesthesia, no numbing of the senses, and no escape from the overwhelming rhythmic tide of the body's frantic demands. The woman is expected to remain stoic and perfectly composed, to offer up her agony as a quiet sacrifice, while the doctor stands by with his leather bag of steel instruments and his hands often unwashed, moving between the sick room and the birthing room with a dangerous invisible trail of bacteria. In this era, the mercy of medicine is often more lethal than the labor itself, as the very men sent to help carry the seeds of childbed fever from one unsuspecting house to the next. It is a time of profound, lonely bravery, where a woman faces the greatest physical challenge of her life, with nothing but her own sheer will, and the cold, thin comfort of a society that believes her pain is her ultimate and unavoidable destiny. Visualize the staggering exhaustion that follows hours upon hours of such a struggle, the way the damp, dark hair clings to the pale forehead, and the way the hands tremble as they grip the twisted linen sheets for a moment of support. There is a sense of being caught in a violent internal storm that has no end, a private war fought in the absolute center of a grand house that remains otherwise perfectly, politely silent to the world. The world outside continues to turn in its slow, indifferent orbit. The servants continue to quietly set the table for a breakfast. The mother may never eat. The carriage waits patiently in the mews for a master who is sleeping fitfully in another wing of the house. The isolation of the birthing room is absolute and terrifying, a narrow gateway between life and death that every Victorian woman must walk through entirely alone, draped in the heavy, suffocating expectations of her gender, her family, and her God. It is a moment of total vulnerability, where the silk and the gold of her status offer no protection against the raw power of nature. In the very midst of this darkened, agonizing battlefield, a revolutionary and whispered truth begins to move through the corridors of power. For centuries, any form of pain relief in labor was considered unholy, a direct and dangerous defiance of divine law, until a queen finally said, in 1853, Queen Victoria herself will demand the blessed relief of chloroform during the birth of her 8th child, forever breaking the religious and patriarchal monopoly on feminine suffering. She will prove to the world that mercy is not a sin, and that a woman's body is not a site for ancient punishment, but a precious life to be cherished, respected, and protected by the best of human knowledge. But as you hold this historical struggle in your mind, return now to the absolute, unwavering, and luminous peace of your own body in the present. The sound of the boiling water is gone, replaced by the soft, rhythmic, and comforting hum of your own quiet room. The tearing of linen is nothing more than a fading memory of a time that can no longer reach you or touch your peace. Take a slow, deep, and entirely effortless breath and feel the profound, incredible relief of existing in a time of mercy, transparency, and bodily autonomy. Your muscles do not need to be tense. They do not need to fight, to fear, or to endure. Soften your muscles now, starting from your forehead, letting the relaxation flow like warm honey down into your jaw, your neck, and deep into your heavy shoulders. Feel the weight of the day and the heavy weight of the past evaporate as you sink deeper and deeper into the safety and the softness of your mattress. Let that softness travel down through your arms, to your very fingertips, and all the way down your spine, letting every single vertebrae settle into a state of total, effortless rest. Move this feeling of profound peace down through your hips, your knees, and finally to your very feet. You are light. You are safe. You are resting in a sanctuary where your physical comfort is a fundamental right, not a theological debate. The battlefield of the 1850s has been reclaimed by the forest of time, and the air you breathe right now is clear, cool, and incredibly kind. Your body is a place of stillness, a temple of your own making, where no ancient decree can ever demand your suffering or your silence. You are the master of your own senses, and your senses are whispering that it is time to let go. Sink further and further into the dark, letting the flickering candlelight of the historical birthing room fade until there is only the warm, protective, and vast velvet of your own deep sleep. You have traveled through the most difficult and hidden rooms of the Victorian house, and you have emerged whole, free, and profoundly rested. The long labor of the past is over, and the morning that awaits you is one of your own choosing, your own voice, and your own undeniable strength. The shadows have retreated, and the silence that remains is one of pure, restorative grace. But even as the newborn's first, fragile cry finally breaks the heavy tension of the room, and the mother's breathing finally slows into a weary, fragile peace, a final, cold shadow lingers at the foot of the bed. For in the year 1850, the blood, the sweat, and the staggering pain of birth were not enough to buy a mother even her most basic legal right. Even after the agony of the battlefield, even after the immense risk of life and limb, the child you bore with your very soul was not legally yours to keep. The law of the land was waiting to step in where the law of nature ended, claiming the fruit of your labor for the man in the study. Let the distant, fading sound of the nursery bells lead you into the final quiet understanding of this ultimate Victorian theft. Your journey is nearly at its end, and the night is soft, still, and perfectly, beautifully quiet. The Victorian house has surrendered to the final darkest stretch of the quiet midnight hours, and the air within the long carpeted corridors has grown thin, cool, and remarkably still. We stand now before a firmly closed bedroom door, a heavy, unyielding slab of dark, polished mahogany that separates the public face of Victorian respectability from the private, hidden reality of the marriage bed. Listen closely to the heavy pressing silence of the night that leans against the wood, a silence that is not at all peaceful, but thick with the unsaid, the endured, and the long forgotten. In the year 1850, this door is a boundary that no law of the land dares to cross. Once the heavy brass latch is clicked, the woman inside enters a space where her voice, her deepest desires, and even her most basic physical autonomy are systematically erased by the ink of her marriage certificate. This is the quietest and most profound room of the grand Victorian house, where the fading echoes of the wedding bells finally meet the cold, hard, and unmoving reality of the patriarchal law. Think of the staggering legal and social reality of the mid-19th century, a time when the very concept of consent within a marriage was not only unrecognized, but legally considered an impossibility. In the eyes of the great Victorian jurists and the stern, bearded men who sat in Parliament, a wife's body was not her own property to govern or to protect. To the Victorian legal mind, the singular act of marriage constituted a permanent consent that could never be withdrawn, no matter the circumstances, the frequency of the demand, or the exhausted state of the woman's heart. There was no such phrase as marital rape in the 1850s. Such a concept would have been a linguistic and legal absurdity to the men of the time. A husband could not steal what he already legally possessed by right of contract, and a wife could not refuse a debt she was legally and spiritually bound to pay upon demand. Visualize the heavy psychological weight of living within a body that is considered a public utility for a private master. In the bright, polite light of the afternoon drawing room, you are the celebrated queen of the home, a figure of grace, poise, and moral authority. But the moment you step behind this closed mahogany door, that authority vanishes like mist in the morning sun. You are expected to be perpetually available, a silent and submissive partner in a dynamic where your no has no legal standing, and your yes is a foregone conclusion. This is the ultimate, chilling expression of coverture, the total absorption of the woman's legal and physical being into that of her husband. It is a world where your most intimate moments are not a shared expression of love or affection, but a one-sided fulfillment of a legal contract, performed in the heavy, airless dark of a room, specifically designed to keep its secrets buried deep within the thick floral wallpaper and the heavy velvet drapes. This total lack of consent reached into every small corner of a woman's daily life, creating a constant, underlying state of weary vigilance. You learn to listen with a sharp ear for the specific metallic click of the door latch, the heavy, familiar weight of a footfall on the rug, and the subtle shift in the air that signaled a husband's approach. You lived in a permanent state of marital debt, a cold term used by both the church and the courts to describe the physical expectations placed upon a wife. It was a debt that could be called in at any time, whether you were exhausted from the demands of the nursery, slowly recovering from the battlefield of birth, or simply longing for the quiet sanctuary of a peaceful, undisturbed sleep. To resist was seen not as an exercise of natural rights, but as a shameful failure of duty, a breach of the sacred contract that society used to keep the domestic engine running smoothly. The Victorian house was a fortress of propriety, but for the woman inside, it was often a place where the most intimate form of theft was legally sanctioned and socially encouraged. As the heavy, expectant silence of the bedroom settles over you like a shroud, the cold and final truth of your protection is revealed in the deep dark. You realize that in the year 1850, your body was not your own private sanctuary. It was a debt owed to your husband, a physical currency payable on demand at any hour of the day or night. You were the only person in the entire world who had no legal right to say no to the man who claimed to be your greatest defender and protector. But as this heavy shadow of the past begins to drift away into the mist, return now to the absolute, unwavering mastery of your own private space in the present. Take a slow, deep, and entirely unrestricted breath of the cool nighttime air that belongs to you and you alone. You are the sole and absolute master of your own sanctuary, surrounded by a profound peace that is built on the solid foundation of your own agency and your own choices. Feel the incredible solid weight of your own autonomy as you sink deeper into the soft mattress, knowing that your yes is a precious gift and your no is an absolute, respected law. Your body is your own sacred ground, a temple where no one may enter without your explicit invitation and your joyful consent. Soften every single muscle in your frame, from the crown of your head to the very tips of your toes, feeling the tension of the historical past evaporate into the quiet dark. You are resting in a time where your consent is the most fundamental of your human rights, a time where your body is cherished as your own and your boundaries are reinforced by the steady progress of history. The closed mahogany door of 1850 has been replaced by the open, airy freedom of your own modern life. You are light. You are safe. You are resting in a world that finally hears your voice and respects your silence with equal measure. Let the rhythmic, steady pulse of your own heart be the only law that governs your deep rest tonight. Sink deeper into the velvet dark, letting the heavy, legalistic shadows of the Victorian bedroom dissolve into nothingness. You are a soul that is whole, protected by the bright light of the truth and the quiet sanctuary of your own modern room. The marital debt of the past has been cancelled forever, leaving you with the restorative luxury of a sleep that is entirely and beautifully your own. Your mind is clear, your limbs are heavy with a peaceful, healthy fatigue, and the night is a soft blanket that covers you in total safety. But as the long night finally begins to turn toward the first faint gray light of the London dawn, a new and different kind of exhaustion begins to settle over the grand Victorian house. For when a woman's voice was systematically suppressed and her body was treated as mere property, the mind often sought its own desperate way out. If the soul grew tired of the body's long struggle, and the heart could no longer bear the immense weight of the silence, the world did not offer a hand of help or a cure of understanding. Instead, it offered a cold, clinical label. When the spirit finally broke under the pressure of maintaining the perfect home, the world called it hysteria, and the final, most chilling room of all began to open its heavy doors. Let the distant, fading sound of the morning bells lead you toward the final understanding of the mind's quiet, desperate rebellion. Your eyes are closing now, and the story is almost complete. The Victorian house begins to stir in the pale grey light of a London morning, yet the grand rooms remain caught in a heavy, muffled stillness that feels like it may never truly break. We return now to the small, delicate, and repetitive sounds of a domestic world that has been meticulously ordered to mask the quiet chaos of the human heart. Listen to the gentle, crystalline clink of a silver spoon against the thin rim of a fine-boned china cup. A sound so thin, sharp, and precise that it seems to hang in the cool morning air like a single solitary note from a forgotten music box. It is a sound of absolute, unyielding propriety, a signal that the days-long rituals have officially begun. In the year 1850, these small, repetitive actions are the only anchors in a vast sea of silent uncertainty. They are the rhythmic heartbeat of a life lived behind the thick, dust-moted velvet curtains, where the entire world is measured in the slow steep of a tea leaf and the constant tension of a single silk thread. Step back into the morning room, where the pale sunlight filters through heavy lace in intricate, shifting geometric patterns across the dark, polished floorboards. Here, the day is built of mundane, quiet tasks that demand a crushing level of aesthetic perfection. Focus on the simple, steady act of arranging dried flowers in a tall, translucent porcelain vase. Your slender fingers move with a ghostly, practiced precision, touching the brittle, papery petals of faded hydrangeas and the stiff, sun-bleached stems of English lavender. Each stalk must be placed just so, creating a fragile illusion of eternal spring in a house that feels perpetually autumnal. There is a strange hollow comfort in this control, in the ability to dictate the exact angle of a dead rose when you cannot dictate a single hour of your own life or your own future. The room smells of stale, sweet potpourri and the faint, earthy scent of the garden, a scent that speaks of a beauty that has been captured, dried, and preserved forever under glass. Nearby, a silver tea service sits upon a heavy mahogany tray, the warm steam rising from the spout in a long, elegant, and shifting curl of white vapor. Watch the steam as it twists and thins, disappearing into the heavy damask hangings of the walls. There is a hypnotic, soothing quality to the heat radiating from the cup, a small, contained fire that you can hold safely between your palms. Across your lap lies a wooden hoop of taut white linen, and in your hand a tiny silver needle threaded with the finest crimson silk. You are embroidering a pattern of delicate vines and sharp thorns, the needle dipping in and out of the fabric with a soft, rhythmic hush. Each stitch is a tiny, disciplined choice. Each knot is a secret held tight. The embroidery is a landscape of your own making, a world where every color is bright and every path leads exactly where you intended it to go. In this small circle of linen, you are the absolute and undisputed sovereign. These rituals extend into every hour of the long, stretching afternoon. You spend time sorting through ribbons of silk and velvet, smoothing them out with the side of your thumb, feeling the different subtle textures, the rough, sturdy grain of the grosgrain, the slippery, ice-cool touch of the satin. You organize a collection of seashells in a velvet-lined box, categorizing them by shape and hue, a silent taxonomy of things washed up from a distant sea you will likely never see again. You practice your scales at the grand piano, the repetitive movement of your fingers over the ivory keys, creating a predictable, mathematical comfort that drowns out the ticking of the clock. These are not merely hobbies. They are the structural supports of a crumbling identity. They are the walls you build to keep the vast encroaching silence of the house from swallowing your spirit whole. You find a strange peace in the repetition, a way to anchor your mind when it threatens to drift toward the forbidden thoughts of freedom or the dark memories of the night before. As you sit in the deepening golden glow of the late afternoon, the true and desperate purpose of these exhausting, repetitive tasks finally reveals itself. You realize that these small, mundane rituals were the only way to keep a flickering mind sane in a world that offered no other outlet for your intellect, your passion, or your agency. The embroidery, the tea, and the flowers were not just pastimes for a lady of leisure. They were the thin silk threads that tied your spirit to the earth, preventing it from drifting away into the gray, numbing fog of a total and silent despair. They were the barriers between your sanity and the void of a life without choice. But as the heavy weight of this historical survival settles, return now to the absolute unwavering safety and space of your own present. Imagine the intricate, beautiful pattern of the lace you are weaving in your mind. See the silver thread moving over and under, in a steady, hypnotic, and gentle rhythm. Over and under. Over and under. Let this rhythmic movement become the very pace of your own breathing, a slow, gentle tide that carries you far away from the heavy drapes and the airless rooms of the 1850s. You are weaving a tapestry of your own peace, a fabric of rest that is soft, light, and entirely your own to design. The needle is still, and the pattern is complete. Soften every muscle in your hands, the hands that in another life would have been cramped and tired over endless needlework. Feel the tension drain out of your fingers, your palms, and your wrists, letting them go limp, heavy, and warm against the soft sheets. Move that softness up through your arms and into your chest, letting the rhythmic over and under of your breath soothe every internal worry, and every lingering thought. You are resting in a time where your mind does not need to be kept sane through repetitive, forced labor. It is allowed to be wild, to be quiet, to be creative, or to simply be still. The silver spoon and the bone china are just harmless objects now, stripped of their power to confine or define you. You are the master of the silence, and the silence is finally kind. Sink deeper and deeper into the velvet dark of your own room, feeling the protective warmth of the modern world surrounding you like a soft, heavy cloak. The morning room of the Victorian house is fading, its polished surfaces growing dim and its dried flowers turning to soft gray shadow. You are floating in a space that is wide, open, and infinite, where the only ritual is the one of falling asleep. Your mind is clear, your body is light, and the night is a vast, empty canvas for your own dreams. Let the over and under of the imaginary thread lead you into the final, deepest layer of relaxation, where the past is nothing more than a story told in the dark to help you appreciate the light of the present. Take one final deep and effortless breath of the cool night air, feeling the effortless expansion of your lungs and the stillness of your heart. You have survived the house of secrets, and you are standing now in the full light of your own hard-won freedom. The rituals of the day are done, the tea has grown cold, and the only task remaining is to let go and drift into the restorative, healing embrace of the night. You are safe. You are whole. You are resting in the luxury of your own truth and your own autonomy. But even as the silk threads are put away and the house falls into its final sleep, a jarring and cold truth remains hidden in the deep shadows of the nursery and the bedroom. For all the curated beauty of the embroidery and the practiced grace of the tea service, there were things that no amount of lace or silk could ever truly cover. Sometimes the rituals were enough to keep the mind steady and the face composed, but they were never enough to hide the bruises, those physical aching marks of a world where a woman was treated as property, and where the protection of a husband often left a visible, lasting stain on the flesh. Let the fading light of the afternoon lead you toward the final heavy realization of the body's silent testimony. Your rest is near, and the shadows are almost gone, but the truth must be heard one last time. The grand Victorian house has grown remarkably still as the ancient clocks in the long, dark hallway strike the final, lonely hours of the deep midnight. But even in this profound velvet silence, there is a lingering, heavy sense of being observed, a watchful, unblinking presence that does not come from the master of the house in his study, but from the cold shadows of the drawing-room corners. Listen to the distinct, sharp, and unforgiving rustle of a heavy black silk dress moving slowly across the polished floorboards, a sound like dry, dead leaves caught in a sudden cold wind. It is the unmistakable sound of the matriarch, the mother-in-law, whose judgmental gaze is as fixed and immovable as the heavy marble statues standing in the foyer. In the year 1850, this is the face of the enforcer, the woman who stands perpetually at the shoulder of the young wife, ensuring that every word, every gesture, and every domestic duty is performed with a chilling, mechanical perfection. This is the watchful eye that never truly sleeps, a stern guardian of a tradition that demands absolute, bloodless devotion to the patriarchal order of the home. Think of the complex, suffocating social reality of a Victorian household, where the patriarchal system was often most ruthlessly and efficiently enforced, not by the men, but by the older women who had survived its crushing weight. To the young wife, the mother-in-law is not a source of comfort, wisdom, or sisterhood, but a living, breathing yardstick of her own perceived failures and inadequacies. Imagine the immense weight of that constant, silent scrutiny during the morning tea or the long hours of afternoon needlework. Every stitch you accidentally drop, every brief moment of fatigue you show, and every quiet sigh you let escape into the air is noted, measured, and judged against an impossible standard of Victorian womanly excellence. This was how the system sustained its power, by turning the victims of one generation into the strict wardens of the next. The older woman, having traded her own dreams and desires for the cold security of a respectable name, now views any sign of spirit or independence in the daughter-in-law as a personal affront to the order she has spent her entire life defending with her own silence and her own hidden, aching scars. Visualize the subtle psychological warfare of the Victorian breakfast table. While the husband is preoccupied with his heavy newspapers and his business affairs, the mother-in-law's eyes are elsewhere, noting the slight telltale tremor in your hand as you pour the tea, the faint paleness of your complexion in the morning light, or the way you look toward the window with a longing you cannot entirely hide. Her comments are never direct or loud. They are wrapped in the soft, poisonous silk of maternal advice and feigned concern. She speaks endlessly of the sacred duties of a wife, of the blessing of a quiet and submissive spirit, and of the absolute necessity of domestic order. She's the one who whispers in her son's ear about your perceived frailty or your unpredictable moods, planting the small seeds of doubt that will later bloom into the husband's coldness or his sudden anger. In this grand house, the cage is not just made of legal statutes and iron bars. It is woven from the sharp, critical whispers of a woman who has long since forgotten what it feels like to be truly free. This was the structural tragedy of the 1850s, the way women were taught to police one another, to crush the very sparks of rebellion that they once felt in their own young hearts. You realize that her sternness is not born of simple malice alone, but of a profound, ancient, and deep-seated fear. She knows that if the system breaks, her own lifelong sacrifice will have been for nothing. She enforces the rigid rules because the rules are the only thing that gives her a shred of reflected power in a world that otherwise ignores her existence. She is the keeper of the perfect home, a woman who has internalized the male gaze so completely that she has become its most vigilant and tireless instrument. The rustle of her black silk is a constant warning that there is no escape, not even in the company of your own kind, for the house is built on the cold foundation of a shared competitive suffering that dares not speak its own name. As you sit in the cold, flickering light of the hallway, a devastating and profound truth reveals itself in the deep shadow of that black silk dress. You realize that sometimes the cage was most fiercely and desperately guarded by those who had already been thoroughly and completely broken by it. The woman who judges you so harshly is merely the ghost of the young girl she used to be, a girl who was taught that the only way to survive was to become the very thing that oppressed her. She is not your enemy, she is your potential future, unless you find the strength to break the cycle of the watchful eye and the silent judgment. But as this realization settles like dust on the heavy, dark furniture, return now to the absolute unwavering safety and privacy of the present. Take a slow, deep, and entirely private breath of the night air that no one else in this world can measure, scrutinize, or judge. You are lying in a space where there are no watchful eyes, no stern rustles of silk, and no impossible standards of perfection to meet. You are the master of your own quiet heart, and your heart is accountable to no one but yourself and your own peace. Let go of the need to please anyone, the judgmental ghosts of the past, the expectations of the world, or the critical voices that linger in your own mind. You are enough, exactly as you are, in this single moment of absolute stillness and grace. Soften every muscle of your face, releasing the tension you have held for so long to keep your expression proper and composed. Let your jaw go slack, your eyes rest deeply and comfortably in their sockets, and your brow becomes smooth, cool, and calm. You are resting in a time where sisterhood is a source of genuine strength, not a mechanism of social control. The mother-in-law of 1850 has long since faded into the fog of history, and her judgmental gaze has no power over the light of your own autonomy and your own life. You are safe. You are private. You are free to be imperfect, to be tired, and to be entirely at peace with your own soul. Feel the soft supporting weight of your mattress, a foundation that doesn't demand perfection, but only demands that you rest. Sink deeper and deeper into the velvet dark, letting the rustle of the black silk become nothing more than the sound of the evening wind in the trees outside your window. The house of judgment is dissolving, its heavy curtains falling, and its stern faces turning to harmless mist. You are a soul that is whole, protected by the sanctuary of your own room and the kindness of a more enlightened and transparent age. The order of the past has been replaced by the beautiful, messy, and honest freedom of your own life. Your mind is quiet, your heart is steady, and the night is a vast, welcoming space where you can simply exist without the burden of being watched. Take one final restorative breath, feeling the last traces of tension drain out of your spirit like water into the thirsty earth. You are resting in the luxury of being entirely unobserved, in the profound peace of your own company and your own thoughts. The day's long performance is over, the audience has departed, and the only presence that remains is the kind and gentle silence of the night. But even in this deep, restorative rest, the internal pressure of the Victorian house continues to build behind the firmly closed doors. For when the watchful eyes and the judgmental whispers became too much for the human heart to bear, the body often spoke the truth that the lips were forbidden to utter. When the spirit could no longer maintain the perfect facade, and the nerves began to frail like old, thin lace, the master of the house did not offer a hand of comfort or a word of understanding. Instead, the doctor was summoned to the bedside, carrying his heavy black bag and his cold, clinical labels of madness. Let the fading sound of the carriage wheels lead you toward the final, chilling diagnosis of the weaker sex. The truth is waiting in the small glass medicine bottle, and the night is growing very thin and very cold. The Victorian house has finally surrendered to a cold, clinical, and vast stillness. But the air here is no longer the thick, comforting scent of a private bedroom. Instead, a new and much sharper sensation cuts through the midnight fog. Listen to the distant, echoing clack of a heavy iron key turning in a cold brass lock, and the low, metallic groan of a heavy door swinging shut. The atmosphere is thin, biting, and filled with the sharp, medicinal sting of carbolic acid, and the faint, underlying smell of damp, ancient stone. This is the world beyond the grand mahogany doors, beyond the silk ribbons, and the delicate tea services. This is the Hysteria ward, the final and most chilling destination for a Victorian soul that dared to fray at the edges of respectability. In the year 1850, the angel in the house could be moved from her gilded pedestal to a narrow rusted iron cot in the blink of an eye, traded for a world of white-tiled walls and the relentless, watchful silence of the asylum. Think of the terrifyingly fragile and invisible line between respectability and madness in the mid-19th century. For a woman, the diagnosis of hysteria was a vast catch-all net designed by the medical establishment to capture any behavior that disrupted the smooth, clockwork mechanism of the patriarchal home. It was a convenient clinical label for disobedience, for uncontrolled emotions, or for the simple human exhaustion of carrying the impossible weight of a perfect life. If a wife grew too loud in her grief, if she showed too much spirit in her arguments, or if she sank too deep into the gray, numbing lethargy of despair, she was not seen as a person in need of comfort or understanding. She was seen as a biological malfunction. The very qualities that made her a woman, her nerves, her womb, and her inherent sensitivity were weaponized against her, turned into a cold medical justification for her own permanent removal from society. In the eyes of the doctors with their analytical gazes, a woman's mind was a volatile and untrustworthy thing that required the firm corrective hand of institutional rest. Visualize the stark, stripped back, and unforgiving reality of the ward. Gone are the heavy damask curtains that once muffled the world. Here, the windows are high, barred, and unadorned, letting in a pale light that reveals every crack in the cold plaster. There is a profound and lonely silence here, broken only by the soft, shuffling footsteps of nurses in the corridor, or the distant, muffled sob of another inconvenient soul who has been forgotten by the world. You are stripped of your silk dresses, your jewelry, and even your name, replaced by a coarse linen shift and a cold number. The treatments are as harsh as the stone floor's ice water baths to calm the nerves, long periods of forced isolation to recenter the spirit, and the constant buzzing pressure of being watched through a small, circular glass portal in the door. It is a world where your very attempt to prove your own sanity, your natural anger at being held, your desperate pleas for release is recorded by the doctor as further evidence of your unstable nature. This was the structural shadow that loomed over every Victorian drawing room, the unspoken knowledge that your place in the world was entirely conditional upon your silence. The asylum was the ultimate mechanism of social control, a place where the weaker sex was taught the final, brutal lesson of absolute submission. You realize that many of the women pacing these narrow white corridors are not mad in any sense we would recognize today. They are simply women who broke under the pressure of the perfect home, women who refused to be treated as property, or women who simply knew too much about the secrets of their husbands. The ward is a warehouse for the spirits that the Victorian house could not contain, a silent reservoir of stories that the world decided it was easier to forget. Every locking door is a reminder that in 1850, a woman's greatest danger was not the darkness of the city, but the cold, legal stroke of a pen in her own husband's hand. As you listen to the rhythmic, haunting drip of water in the stone hallway, the most terrifying truth of the Victorian age finally crystallizes in the dark. You realize that in the year 1850, an inconvenient wife could be effectively erased from society with nothing more than a doctor's signature and her husband's quiet consent. The woman who poured the tea one morning could be a ghost by the next, her life, her children, and her very identity swallowed by the asylum walls, leaving the respectable world to continue its dance without a single backward glance or a moment of regret. But as this chilling shadow of the past looms, return now to the absolute, unwavering, and vast safety of your present moment. Take a slow, deep, and unrestricted breath of the air around you, air that is open, vast, and entirely free of the sting of carbolic acid. You are not in a ward. You are not behind a locked door. You are home. You are lying in a space that is governed by your own will, in a world that recognizes your mind as your own sacred and private territory. Feel the incredible solid weight of your own reality as you sink into the mattress, knowing that no signature and no law can ever erase the truth of who you are or what you feel. Soften every single muscle in your body, letting the phantom rest of the past be replaced by the genuine, restorative peace of the present. Let your jaw relax, your shoulders drop, and your hands open wide and soft against the clean sheets. You are resting in a time where your emotions are honored as your own, where your voice is heard, and where your spirit is allowed to be as vast and as complex as the night sky. The asylum of 1850 has crumbled into the dust of history, and its iron keys have long since rusted away into nothingness. You are light. You are safe. You are resting in the sanctuary of a more enlightened and compassionate age. Let the profound stillness of your own room be the only medicine you need tonight. Sink deeper and deeper into the soft, supporting dark, feeling the protective warmth of your own life surrounding you like a thick, downy quilt. The white tiled walls and the barred windows are fading, dissolving into the gentle mist of a dream that can no longer touch you. You are a soul that is whole, protected by the light of modern understanding and the sanctuary of your own autonomy. The hysteria of the past was merely the sound of a heart trying to beat in a vacuum, and now you can breathe deeply, slowly, and peacefully. Your mind is quiet, your heart is steady, and the night is a wide open horizon where you can wander in total safety. Take one final long breath of the cool night air, feeling the effortless expansion of your spirit. You have traveled through the darkest corridors of the Victorian house, and you have emerged into the clear, bright light of your own freedom. The ward is empty, the locks are broken, and the only path remaining is the one that leads into a deep and healing sleep. You are safe. You are whole. You are home in the light. But for those who were not sent away, for the women who remained behind the velvet curtains and the polished mahogany doors, the struggle took a different, more subtle, and perhaps more exhausting form. Life did not become easier. It simply became a more demanding and more precise theater of the self. For those who stayed, every hour of every day was a calculated, grueling performance of the perfect Lady A mask that had to be maintained even when the heart was breaking and the soul was screaming for the light. Let the fading echo of the asylum bells lead you toward the final, silent bow of the Victorian woman. The performance is almost over, and the night is waiting for its final end. You are drifting now, safe and sound, into the quiet. The grand Victorian house has finally fallen into a profound, velvet stillness, as the last of the flickering gaslights are lowered and the heavy damask curtains are drawn tight against the cold world outside. We return now to the quiet, rhythmic, and almost hypnotic sounds of the domestic surface, the thin, repetitive sounds of a life spent in the tireless pursuit of an impossible clarity. Listen to the soft, rhythmic hush of a fine feather duster moving across a cold marble mantelpiece, and the steady circular rub of a soft cloth against a heavy silver tray until it glows with a mirrored metallic intensity. In the year 1850, these are the sounds of a woman's devotion, the audible evidence of a house that is functioning with the precision of a fine Swiss watch. But look closer through the shadows, and you will see that this glow is not born of leisure. It is the result of a constant, invisible, and bone-deep labor that is meticulously disguised as the natural, effortless grace of a lady. Think of the staggering, exhausting reality of Victorian housework in an era long before the luxury of modern convenience. For the angel in the house, the management of the home is not a chore. It is a moral performance of the highest order. Imagine the hours spent in the pale morning light, overseeing the scrubbing of floors, the beating of heavy rugs, and the endless polishing of brass, wood, and glass. Even if you have servants to do the heaviest lifting, the absolute burden of perfection rests entirely upon your slender shoulders. You are the conductor of a vast, silent orchestra of cleaning. Your eyes are trained to find the single stray hair on the carpet, the microscopic layer of soot on the windowsill, or the faint, ghostly fingerprint on the crystal decanter. This is a world where cleanliness is not just a preference. It is a grueling, daily battle against the soot of the industrial city and the perceived impurity of a wandering mind. Visualize the physical toll of this constant, domestic vigilance. Your hands, though they may be softened by expensive creams and hidden by lace-trimmed gloves, are often stiff from the repetitive motions of needlework or the constant checking of the linens. The leisure of the Victorian lady is a carefully constructed myth. While you sit by the fire with your embroidery, your mind is racing through 100 domestic checklists. The inventory of the larder, the mending of the nursery clothes, the scheduling of the coal delivery, and the preparation for a dinner party where your very worth as a wife will be judged by the clarity of the soup and the shine of the silk. It is an exhausting, 24-hour theater of the effortless, where you must appear as a serene, unruffled spirit while privately navigating a sea of logistical complexity and profound physical fatigue. This labor was designed to be entirely invisible, to seem as though the house simply bloomed into perfection of its own accord. But the cost was a total absorption of the self. You realize that in 1850, A woman's intellect and energy were systematically funneled into the narrow, shallow channels of the mantelpiece and the mahogany table. Your creativity was reduced to the arrangement of fruit, your ambition was redirected into the whiteness of the laundry, and your soul was measured by the lack of dust in the furthest corners of the guest room. The Victorian house was a beautiful gilded machine that ran on the fuel of a woman's vanished potential, a place where the art of keeping appearances became the only art you were truly permitted to master and maintain. As you sit in the deepening cool shadows of the evening, the ultimate and most sobering truth of your domestic devotion reveals itself. You realize that in the year 1850, a clean and perfectly ordered house was the only acceptable evidence of a virtuous and sane woman. Any speck of dust, any lapse in the silver's glow, or any disorder in the drawing room was seen, not as a simple mistake, but as a direct reflection of a flawed and neglected moral character. Your house was your soul made visible to the neighbors, and the labor required to keep it bright was the heavy price you paid to remain respectable in a world that was always waiting for you to fail. But as this realization of the past drifts away like smoke, return now to the absolute, unwavering, and effortless safety of your present. Imagine, for a moment, a single tiny dust mote dancing in a long silver beam of moonlight that stretches across your own bedroom floor. Watch it move slow, steady, and perfectly aimless. It has no duty. It has no standard to meet. It is simply existing in the light, over and under, around and through. Let the slow, hypnotic dance of that tiny mote become the pace of your own breathing. You are lying in a space where perfection is a forgotten word, and where your worth is not measured by the shine of a surface, but by the peace in your heart. Soften every single muscle in your frame, letting the tension of the perfect lady evaporate into the night air. Feel your jaw go slack, your shoulders sink deep into the mattress, and your hands grow heavy and still. You are resting in a time where your home is a sanctuary for your comfort, not a stage for your morality. You are allowed to be messy. You are allowed to be tired. And you are allowed to simply be. The silver trays and the marble mantelpieces of 1850 have faded into the mists of history, and the only appearances that matter now are the ones you see in your own peaceful dreams. You are light. You are safe. You are resting in the restorative luxury of a world that values you for your soul, not your dusting. Sink deeper and deeper into the soft, supporting dark, feeling the protective warmth of your own modern life surrounding you like a thick, downy quilt. The soot of the Victorian city and the pressure of the drawing room are gone, replaced by the clear, quiet air of a more honest and compassionate age. You are a soul that is whole, protected by the light of your own truth and the sanctuary of your own autonomy. The art of the past was a burden, but the silence of the night is a gift. Your mind is quiet, your heart is steady. Take one final, long, and restorative breath of the cool night air, feeling the effortless expansion of your spirit. You have traveled through the most demanding rooms of the Victorian house, and you have emerged into the clear, bright light of your own freedom. The mantelpiece is still, the silver is put away, and the only path remaining is the one that leads into a deep and healing sleep. You are safe. You are whole. You are resting in the light of your own presence. But as the moonlight fades and the house settles into its final, deepest rest, a lingering and cold reality remains at the center of the Victorian marriage. For all the labor, for all the virtue, and for all the perfectly polished silver, there was one thing that no amount of domestic excellence could ever truly secure. All the silver in the world, and all the perfect appearances in London, could not buy a wife's most basic legal freedom. Even in the brightest, cleanest house, the shadow of the law remained, reminding the woman that she was merely a guest in a home she could never truly own. Let the fading echo of the morning bells lead you toward the final quiet understanding of the Victorian wife's ultimate status. The performance is over, and the night is waiting for its final end. You are drifting now, safe and sound, into the quiet of your own being. The grand Victorian house has finally surrendered to the deepest, most hollow hours of the night, where the only remaining sound is the slow, rhythmic, and weary ticking of a tall grandfather clock in the dark foyer. But in this absolute stillness, there is another sound, a sharp, metallic, and proprietary sound that once signaled the absolute boundaries of a woman's entire world. Listen to the distinct, rhythmic jingle of heavy brass and iron keys deep within a husband's pocket as he moves through the hallway. It is a sound of total possession, a musical reminder of exactly who holds the power to lock and unlock every door, every desk, and every small coin box in this gilded cage. In the year 1850, those keys represent the invisible chains of gold that bind a wife to her husband's will, a constant, jingling heartbeat of a financial reality that leaves her utterly, legally, and permanently penniless. Think of the staggering and absolute financial reality of the mid-19th century, a time when the cold law of coverture transformed a bride into a legal non-entity. From the very moment the wedding ring was slipped onto your finger, your identity was absorbed into that of your husband, and with it, every scrap of property you ever owned. Imagine the chilling realization that your dowry, your family's inheritance, and even the small, precious trinkets of your childhood now belong entirely to the man standing across the breakfast table. In the eyes of the Victorian court, you do not exist as an independent financial being. You cannot sign a contract, you cannot own a business, and you cannot even claim the wages you might earn through your own hard labor. Even if you were to work as a governess or a seamstress, every penny of your earnings belongs, by law, to your husband, to be spent or saved exactly as he sees fit without ever needing your consent. Visualize the psychological weight of living in a world where you must ask permission for the smallest of life's basic necessities. In the bright, polite light of the shopping districts, you are seen as a figure of immense wealth, draped in expensive silks and surrounded by fine furs. But beneath the surface of this luxury lies a profound and humiliating dependency. You may live in a mansion filled with priceless art and fine mahogany, yet you have no legal right to a single shilling in your own name. Every ribbon you buy, every book you read, and every gift you give must be approved and paid for by a man who holds the purse strings with a firm, paternalistic grip. This is the reality of the allowance, a small, controlled sum of money granted to you like a child, a gesture of generosity that only serves to highlight your total lack of genuine independence. This financial imprisonment reached into the very heart of a woman's dignity, creating a constant, underlying state of quiet and desperate vigilance. You learned to navigate the world through credit and shop accounts, with every merchant sending the bill directly to your husband's office for his personal and thorough scrutiny. You lived in a state of perpetual debt to the man you married, a debt that was never meant to be repaid, only maintained. The Victorian house was a fortress of opulence, but for the woman inside it was a place where the most basic form of power, the power to provide for oneself, was systematically stripped away. You could be surrounded by the finest things the world has to offer, yet remain more financially vulnerable than the beggar on the street corner, for at least the beggar owns the copper in his hand. The reveal, as the rhythmic jingling of the keys fades into the dark corners of the hallway, the most sobering and cold truth of your privileged life is finally revealed. You realize that in the year 1850, you could be a millionaire's wife, living in the height of London society, and still not have the single legal penny in your pocket to buy a simple loaf of bread without your husband's explicit permission. Your wealth was a mirage, a beautiful golden chain that kept you tethered to a life where your value was measured by his status, and your survival depended entirely on his whim. But as this shadow of the past drifts away into the night, return now to the absolute, unwavering mastery of your own reality in the present. Take a slow, deep, and entirely free breath of the night air. It belongs to no one but you. You are lying in a space where you have everything you need in this perfect and protected moment of rest. You are a soul that is whole, independent, and secure in your own right. Feel the incredible solid weight of your own autonomy as you sink into the mattress, knowing that your security is built on your own strength and the progress of a world that finally recognizes your worth as a human being. Soften every muscle in your body, from the tips of your fingers to the soles of your feet, letting the tension of the financial ward evaporate into the quiet dark. You are resting in a time where your labor is yours, your property is yours, and your future is your own to design. The jingling keys of 1850 have been replaced by the quiet, confident knowledge of your own agency. You are light. You are safe. You are resting in a world that respects your signature and honors your independence. Let the steady, calming pulse of your own heart be the only sound that governs your rest tonight. Sink deeper into the velvet dark, letting the heavy, legalistic shadows of the Victorian bankbooks dissolve into nothingness. You are a person who is complete, protected by the sanctuary of your own room and the strength of your own name. The chains of gold of the past have been broken forever, leaving you with the restorative luxury of a sleep that is entirely and beautifully your own. Your mind is quiet, your heart is steady, and the night is a soft blanket that covers you in total, unearned safety. Take one final long breath of the cool night air, feeling the effortless expansion of your spirit. You have traveled through the most restrictive rooms of the Victorian house, and you have emerged into the clear, bright light of your own freedom. The keys are silent, the accounts are settled, and the only path remaining is the one that leads into a deep and healing sleep. You are safe. You are whole. You are resting in the light. But as the morning sun begins to touch the heavy curtains, the final and most devastating reality of the Victorian wife remains waiting in the shadows. For the chains of gold were not just meant to keep you in the house. They were meant to ensure you could never leave. If you ever dared to step out of that door, if you ever sought the freedom of the world outside, you did not just leave the silk and the silver behind. You left with nothing, not a penny of your own, not a stitch of clothes that wasn't legally his, and most agonizingly of all, not even the children you had carried in your own body. Let the fading echo of the nursery bells lead you toward the final heartbreaking price of a woman's rebellion. The story is almost done, and the night is very long and very still. The grand Victorian house has finally fallen into a deep, heavy, and absolute slumber, and the air within the lower floors is thick with the scent of cold beeswax and long-extinct hearths. But if you listen very closely, through the many dense layers of plaster, lath, and heavy timber, there is a thin, haunting sound drifting down from the very top of the house. It is the faint, rhythmic sound of a baby crying in a distant nursery, 3 full floors above the master bedroom. It is a lonely, isolated sound, muffled by the sheer distance and the rigid, unforgiving architecture of a house designed to keep the messiness of life far away from the polished elegance of the drawing room. In the year 1850, the nursery is a separate kingdom, a world of its own where the most intimate bonds of nature are carefully managed and held at a polite distance by the invisible, efficient hands of the domestic staff. Think of the staggering and quiet emotional reality of Victorian motherhood, a world where the title of lady was often synonymous with a profound and forced separation from your own flesh and blood. For the woman of the upper classes, the biological act of birth was followed not by a period of warm bonding, but by a systematic cold distancing. From the very moment the child is born, they are handed to a wet nurse, then a nanny, and finally a governess. You are the celebrated queen of the home, Yet you must ask the nanny's permission to visit your own nursery, and your children are brought to you for only 1 hour of sanitized, quiet interaction in the late afternoon. Imagine the hollow, aching void of hearing your child's laughter or their sharp tears through the ceiling, knowing that your social status depends entirely on your ability to remain detached, composed, and perfectly removed from the animal demands of mothering. Visualize the stark, disciplined atmosphere of those high, upper floors. The nursery is a place of plain wooden furniture, simple oatmeal, and strict, unwavering schedules, a world away from the silk-lined walls and the plush velvet chairs of the parlor. There is a profound and heavy silence that sits between the mother and the child, a silence built brick by a society that fears spoiling the next generation with too much visible affection. When the boys grow older, they are sent away to distant, cold boarding schools to be hardened into men of the empire, and the girls are kept in the schoolroom to be molded into the same silent, stoic figures as their mothers. In the 1850s, to be a successful mother was to be a distant overseer, a figure of moral authority rather than a source of physical comfort. It was a world where the nursery door was a psychological barrier that very few mothers had the social courage to truly break. This separation reached into the very heart of a woman's identity, creating a constant, underlying grief that had no name and no outlet. You lived in a house full of life, yet you were often a complete stranger to the very souls you brought into the world. The Victorian house was a fortress of propriety, but for the woman inside, it was a place where the most natural of all human instincts, the desperate desire to hold, to comfort, and to truly know one's own child, was treated as a weakness to be overcome. You learned to communicate through formal letters and brief, supervised visits, watching your children grow from a distance like figures in a distant, fading landscape. It was a life of profound emotional poverty disguised as the highest form of respectability, where the warmth of a mother's touch was traded for the cold, hard gold of social standing and family reputation. As the faint, distant crying from the high nursery finally subsides into the quiet of the whole night, the most heartbreaking truth of your high status is revealed in the dark. You realize that in the year 1850, to be a perfect lady meant being an absolute stranger to your own offspring. Your success as a woman was measured by how little your children actually needed you, and the price of your respectability was the slow, silent death of the most sacred bond a human being can know. You were the ornamental center of a family that lived in entirely separate rooms, breathing the same air, but never touching the same heart. But as this heavy shadow of the past drifts away into the velvet night, return now to the absolute, unwavering, and luminous safety of the present. Take a slow, deep, and entirely free breath of the night air that is warm, kind, and filled with the presence of those you love. You are lying in a space where love is not a duty or a performance, but a living, breathing, and undeniable reality. Feel a profound sense of warmth and unconditional love wrapping around you like a heavy, soft, and hand-woven blanket. It is a warmth that starts deep at your heart and spreads through your entire chest, moving slowly down your arms and into your legs until you are completely enveloped in a cocoon of absolute acceptance and safety. Soften every single muscle in your body, letting the cold, distant propriety of the past evaporate into the quiet dark. You are resting in a time where the bond between mother and child is cherished as the foundation of the world. A time where you are allowed to be present, to be soft, and to be deeply connected to your own heart and the hearts of others. The nursery doors of 1850 have been thrown wide open, and the distance has been closed forever by the light of understanding. You are light. You are safe. You are resting in a world that values the touch of a hand and the warmth of a hug far more than the shine of a silver tray or the height of a social title. Let the steady, loving pulse of your own heart be the only law that governs your rest tonight. Sink deeper and deeper into the velvet dark, letting the heavy, distant echoes of the nursery bells dissolve into nothingness. You are a soul that is whole, protected by the sanctuary of your own room and the strength of a love that knows no boundaries and no distance. The emotional poverty of the past has been replaced by the restorative luxury of a sleep that is filled with the knowledge that you are loved, you are valued, and you truly belong. Your mind is quiet, your heart is full, and the night is a soft, protective space that holds you in its arms like a child. Take one final, long breath of the cool night air, feeling the effortless expansion of your spirit. You have traveled through the most isolated rooms of the Victorian house, and you have emerged into the clear, bright light of your own emotional freedom. The crying has stopped, the house is still, and the only path remaining is the one that leads into a deep and healing sleep. You are safe. You are whole. You are home in the peace of the night. But as the deep stillness of the night reaches its absolute peak, a new and different kind of energy begins to stir in the shadows of the London streets. For even in the heart of this cold, rigid, and unyielding world, the human spirit could not be entirely extinguished. Behind the closed doors and the silent nurseries, in the secret diaries and the whispered conversations of the kitchen, a fire was beginning to burn, a fire of realization, of anger, and of a hope that would one day burn the gilded cage to the ground. Let the first, faint hint of the morning sun lead you toward the final, triumphant awakening of the Victorian soul. The story is changing, and the night is almost over. The grand Victorian house has finally reached its deepest, most hollow point of stillness, the heavy, ancient masonry of its soot-stained walls cooling in the damp, clinging night air of old London. The tired servants have long since climbed the narrow back stairs to their cramped attic cots, and the stern master of the house is lost in a heavy, untroubled sleep in the grandest chamber of all. But in a small, shadowed corner of a secondary bedroom, behind a firmly locked door and a heavily drawn velvet curtain, there is a distinct sound that the thick fabric cannot entirely muffle. Listen to the frantic, rhythmic scratching of a fine steel nib against a thick sheet of expensive vellum, the desperate sound of a secret diary being filled under the flickering amber light of a single dying tallow candle. In the year 1850, this is the most dangerous and subversive sound in the entire house. It is the sound of a human mind refusing to be erased, a soul stubbornly asserting its existence in the only territory it has left, the private, unmapped wilderness of the written word. Think of the immense, quiet bravery required to simply hold a pen in the dead of night, when every law of your society and every sermon from the pulpit tells you that your thoughts are secondary and your opinions are entirely irrelevant. In the bright, artificial light of the afternoon drawing room, you are a silent, graceful ornament, a vessel for the heavy expectations of others. But here, in the fragile dancing circle of candlelight, you are a silent revolutionary. Imagine the dark ink staining the tips of your tired fingers as you pour out the cold truths that would be diagnosed as hysteria if ever spoken aloud. You write of the gnawing boredom that eats at your spirit like rust. You write of the deep hunger for an education that was systematically denied to you. You write of the fierce love for your children that is being slowly strangled by distance and propriety. These secret diaries are the hidden catacombs of the Victorian age, the only place where the true history of the human heart is kept safe from the cold, judgmental eyes of the world outside. Visualize the invisible, growing networks of rebellion that are beginning to stretch across the fog-shrouded city, connecting one locked bedroom to another in a web of silent understanding. In the year 1850, women are starting to realize that they are not alone in their gilded, velvet-lined cages. Behind the polite, rehearsed exchange of calling cards and the formal, rigid structure of afternoon tea parties, secret letters are being passed from hand-to-hand, letters that do not speak of fashion, gossip, or the weather, but of justice, autonomy, and the dawning, radical dream of the vote. These are the tiny sparks of rebellion, small, whispered conversations in the back of darkened carriages, secret societies meeting under the guise of charitable sewing circles, and the quiet, steady organizing of a resistance that has no official name yet, but has a heartbeat that is growing louder and steadier with every passing year. You are part of a silent, subterranean army that is finally learning to speak the language of power in the safety of the dark. This rebellion is not fought with heavy cannons or sharp bayonets, but with the steady, unyielding pressure of 1,000 small, daily refusals. It is the wife who quietly hides a forbidden book of philosophy behind her embroidery hoop. It is the mother who whispers a dangerous truth to her daughter in the nursery. It is the woman who refuses to be broken by the cold walls of the asylum or the suffocating air of the drawing room. Every single time you choose to think for yourself, every time you recognize the deep injustice of your own forced silence, you are striking a tiny match in the vast darkness. The Victorian house was built to be a fortress of the status quo, an unmoving monument to the past, but it cannot stop the light of a mind that has finally decided to see. The soot of the industrial city may blacken the windows, but it cannot touch the fire that is beginning to burn in the secret diaries and the whispered pacts of a generation that is tired of being treated as mere property. As the last few inches of the tallow candle melt into a warm pool of wax, the most profound and triumphant truth of your long struggle is finally revealed in the fading glow. You realize that every single no whispered in the dark, every secret page written in quiet defiance, and every small act of domestic rebellion was not a wasted effort or a lonely cry for help. It was a solid brick being laid for a future you might never see with your own eyes, but one that you are building with your very breath and your very spirit. You are the hidden architect of a world you will never inhabit, a world where the doors you found locked will be thrown wide open for the women who come after you. Your silence was not a defeat. It was a long, slow, and necessary gathering of strength for the ages. But as the heavy weight of this historical labor finally settles into the deep foundations of the house, return now to the absolute, unwavering, and luminous peace of your own presence. Take a slow, deep, and entirely free breath of the night air that is clear, vast, and filled with the scent of a freedom that was once only a fragile dream in the dark. The past is settling into the earth now, becoming the rich, dark, and fertile soil for tomorrow's flowers. The struggles of 1850 are no longer a burden you must carry on your shoulders. They are the deep roots of the great tree, under which you now rest in total, unshakable safety. Feel the profound relief of living in the very future that those secret diaries prayed for, a future where your voice is your own, your body is your own sanctuary, and your path is yours alone to choose. Soften every single muscle in your body, from the tips of your fingers to the very soles of your feet, letting the phantom tension of the past rebellion dissolve into the gentle, restorative quiet of your own room. Let your jaw relax completely, your shoulders sink deep into the welcoming softness of the mattress, and your hands grow heavy, warm, and still by your side. You are resting in a sanctuary that was bought with the quiet bravery of those who came before you. But you do not need to fight or resist anymore. You are allowed to be still. You are allowed to be at peace. The tiny sparks have finally become a steady, warm light that guides you into a sleep that is safe, deep, and entirely your own. You are light. You are safe. You are resting in the luxury of a world that finally knows your name, hears your voice, and honors your spirit. Sink deeper and deeper into the soft velvet dark, letting the rhythmic scratching of the pen and the rustle of the secret pages fade into the gentle, natural hum of the silence. The Victorian house is crumbling into the mist of time, its heavy mahogany doors turning to harmless shadows, and its iron keys dissolving into fine dust. You are a soul that is whole, protected by the sanctuary of your own autonomy and the kindness of an age that has finally learned to value the truth of the individual. The long dark night of the 19th century is finally coming to an end, leaving you in a space that is wide, open, and infinite. Your mind is quiet, your heart is steady, and the night is a soft protective blanket that covers you in the profound and simple grace of the present moment. Take one final, long, and effortless breath of the cool night air, feeling the expansion of your spirit and the absolute stillness of your soul. You have traveled through every single room of the Victorian house, from the parlor to the asylum, from the nursery to the secret desk, and you have emerged whole, recognized, and free. The history of the heart has been written, the ink has dried, and the book is now being closed with a gentle, loving hand. The only path remaining is the one that leads into the deepest and most healing sleep of your life. You are safe. You are whole. You are resting in the light of your own freedom. The candle flickers one last time, casting a long, dancing shadow against the wall, before it finally gracefully and quietly goes out. The room is plunged into a darkness that is not cold or terrifying, but warm, protective, and vast. The light of the physical flame is gone, but the light of the truth remains, burning steady and bright in the very center of your being. The story is over, the house is finally still, and the world is waiting for you to dream it anew. Sleep now in the perfect and unshakable knowledge that you are free. The dawn is coming, but for now, there is only the beautiful, silent, and eternal peace of the night. You are home. You are free. Sleep now. A soft, cooling wind blows through the ancient, overgrown grass of a quiet Victorian cemetery, where the heavy gray headstones lean tiredly against one another like old friends, sharing a long-held, sacred secret. The iron gates are rusted open, surrendered to the slow creeping ivy that softens the sharp edges of the granite. Here, under the watchful mossy gaze of weathered stone angels, the heavy silence of the 19th century finally finds its ultimate rest. If you listen to the wind as it rustles through the tall yew trees, you can almost hear the faint, collective sigh of the thousands of women who lived, labored, and loved within the cold, rigid confines of the Victorian house. In the year 1850, their names were written in family Bibles and on marriage certificates, but their true stories were often buried deep within the silent earth, waiting for a time when the world would finally be ready to hear their voices and honor their truth. Think of the incredible invisible thread of history that connects the very air you breathe today to the stifled, corseted lives of the women who came long before you. Every freedom you possess in this quiet, protected moment of rest, the right to own your own thoughts, the power to govern your own body, the simple, profound ability to sign your own name and claim your own future, was bought with the quiet, persistent labor of those who lived behind the heavy velvet curtains. Your life is the vibrant, living legacy of their long silence. You are the beneficiary of every secret diary written by flickering candlelight, every no whispered in the dark of a mahogany bedroom, and every tiny spark of rebellion that refused to be extinguished by the cold winds of Victorian propriety. The world you inhabit, a world of choice, agency, and light, was built brick by women who were legally considered no more than shadows in their own homes. Visualize the immense quiet strength of that lineage, a long, unbroken line of spirits reaching out through the mist of time to touch your hand with a gentle, approving warmth. They were the architects of the bridges you now cross without thinking. They were the silent gardeners of the freedom you now harvest every single day. When you speak your truth, you are speaking for the woman who was forced into a hysterical silence. When you walk through a door of your own choosing, you are walking for the woman whose world was bounded strictly by the nursery and the parlor. When you look at the stars and dream of a life that is entirely your own, you are fulfilling a vision that they could only glimpse in the flickering, dying glow of a winter fire. Their struggle was not a tragedy. It was a long, slow, and necessary sowing of seeds in a winter that felt as though it would never end. Yet it has finally bloomed into the world, you see. This legacy is not a heavy burden of debt, but a gift of absolute and total grace. You do not need to carry their grief, their fear, or their exhaustion. You only need to carry their light forward into the night. You realize that the Victorian house, with all its brass locks and its heavy iron keys, was never strong enough to truly contain the human spirit. The walls have crumbled, the carbolic acid has evaporated, and the judgmental whispers have been drowned out by the steady, powerful pulse of human progress. You are living in a time that was once an impossible fairy tale, a distant and unreachable horizon for those who came before. The very fact that you can lie here in total safety, master of your own room and your own soul, is the ultimate triumph of those who were once considered mere property. Their silence has been transformed into your voice, and their confinement has become your wide-open sky. As the wind in the cemetery grows still, and the shadows of the stone angels lengthen in the cool moonlight, the most profound and beautiful truth of your existence is finally revealed. You realize that in this very moment, in the quiet sanctuary of your own life, you are the dream they weren't allowed to have. You are the living, breathing answer to every secret prayer whispered in a Victorian nursery and every hope inscribed in a hidden, ink-stained diary. Your autonomy, your peace, and your freedom are the fruits of a tree that was planted in the dark, and your current happiness is the final, glorious vindication of their long, silent endurance throughout the centuries. But as this realization settles like a soft, warm, and protective blanket over your spirit, return now to the absolute, unwavering, and restorative safety of your own rest. Take a slow, deep, and entirely grateful breath of the night air that is clear, free, and yours alone. You are lying in a space where the struggle is over and the victory is won. Honor the women of the past by resting well, for their labor was intended to give you this very peace. They fought so that you wouldn't have to. They endured so that you could simply be. Feel the incredible, solid weight of their love and their sacrifice supporting you as you sink deeper into the mattress, knowing that your rest is the highest form of gratitude you can offer to those who stood before you. Soften every single muscle in your body, from the crown of your head to the tips of your toes, letting the last traces of historical tension evaporate into the night air. You are resting in a time where your worth is inherent, your voice is honored, and your soul is entirely your own. The cemeteries of the past are quiet, and the heavy houses of the 1850s are nothing more than fading ghosts in the fog of history. You are light. You are safe. You are resting in a world that was made specifically for you. Let the steady, calming rhythm of your own heart be the final, peaceful note in the story of the Victorian house and the women who once inhabited its shadows. Sink deeper and deeper into the soft, supporting dark, feeling the protective warmth of your own life surrounding you like a heavy velvet cloak. The world of coverture, hysteria, and silence is gone, replaced by the bright, clear light of a more compassionate and honest age. You are a soul that is whole, protected by the legacy of those who loved you before you were even born. The night is a vast, welcoming space where you are finally allowed to let go of the world and drift into the profound grace of the present moment. Your mind is quiet, your heart is full, and the night is a soft sanctuary that holds you in its arms with the tenderness of a mother. Take one final, long, and effortless breath of the cool night air, feeling the expansion of your spirit and the stillness of your soul. You have traveled through the entire history of the house, and you have found your way back to the truth of your own freedom. The story of the past has been told, the legacy has been claimed, and the only path remaining is the one that leads into a deep and healing sleep. You are safe. You are whole. You are resting in the light of the future, a future that is finally beautifully here. Sleep now, with a heart that is light and a mind that is at peace. You are the continuation of their story. You are the chapter they dreamed of writing, the fraught ending they hoped for, and the beginning of something new and beautiful. The candle has gone out, the keys are silent, and the dawn is waiting to greet you as a person who is entirely, beautifully free. Sleep now, in the perfect and unshakable knowledge that the night is yours, the world is yours, and the peace you feel is your birthright. Sleep now, for you are the dream, and the dream is finally awake in the quiet of the night. Sleep tight. The grand Victorian house has finally dissolved into the deep mists of the long-forgotten past, and the last rhythmic ticking of the tall grandfather clock in the dark hallway has slowed, faltered, and finally stopped forever. Listen now to that total velvety silence, a silence so deep, so thick, and so incredibly kind that it feels like a soft, warm weight pressing gently against every inch of your skin. There are no more heavy footsteps on the back stairs, no more rustling of stiff silk, and no more frantic scratching of pens in the desperate dark. The year 1850 has completely faded away into the shadows of history, leaving behind only the profound, absolute, and shimmering stillness of this room and this single, sacred moment. You are suspended in a space where time has no meaning, a sanctuary of pure, unadulterated rest, where the air is cool, the shadows are protective, and the world is finally, completely, and beautifully quiet. Begin now a final, effortless journey through your own physical body, letting every single part of you surrender to the heavy, welcoming pull of the earth. Start at the very top of your head, letting the scalp relax and the forehead become smooth, cool, and wide. Let the tiny, tired muscles around your eyes let go entirely, feeling your eyelids grow heavy and still, as if they are made of the softest, darkest lead. Let your jaw drop slightly, releasing the very last lingering word of the day, and feel that heavy relaxation flow down into your neck and across the wide, steady span of your shoulders. Your shoulders are sinking, drifting deeper and deeper into the mattress, shedding the heavy weight of history and the endless expectations of the future. Move that heavy, warm relaxation down through your arms, flowing through your elbows and into your wrists, letting your hands lie open, limp, and peaceful against the cool sheets. Feel the life in your fingertips grow still and quiet. Now, focus entirely on your chest, feeling it rise and fall in a slow, natural, and rhythmic tide that requires no effort at all. With every single breath out, you are sinking further into the dark. With every breath in, you are filling with a quiet, silver light of peace. Let the softness move through your hips, down the long, tired muscles of your thighs, past your knees, and into your feet, until every cell of your being is vibrating with the low frequency of total, absolute peace. You are not just lying on the mattress. You are dissolving into it, becoming one with the supportive, welcoming, and eternal dark. As you float in this perfect, wordless suspension, the final truth of the night reveals itself with a gentle, shimmering clarity. You realize that there is no more history to resolve, no more future to plan, and no more difficult roles to perform. The stories of the house, the struggles of the past, and the dreams of tomorrow have all vanished into the mist. There is only this single, exquisite, and pure moment of sleep, a state of being where you are neither a daughter, a wife, nor a worker, but a soul at rest. You have reached the very center of the silence, the point where the self ends and the infinite peace begins. Drift, descend, disappear into the quiet, velvet dark. Let the boundaries of your mind soften and blur until you are as vast as the night sky itself. There is nothing left to hold on to and nothing left to carry. You are falling upward into a dreamless, healing void, a space of absolute safety where the only task is to simply exist. The wind outside has whispered its very last word, and the shadows have turned to soft, gray smoke. You are light, you are nothing, and you are everything in the stillness. The world is gone. The house is gone. The light is gone. Good night.